Chapter 370. Too Naive. Zongheng Literature's 2017 annual stocktaking begins. You can vote for the best author and best novel on the Zongheng Novel app or Zongheng Computer mobile website. You can see it when you open the homepage of The Strongest Counterattack. Everyone gets 5 free tickets a day. You can also buy tickets by giving them a tip. One ticket costs 100 Zongheng coins. Please vote for the best novel, The Strongest Counterattack. Don't vote for the best author. Let's gather our strength and let everyone see the strength of The Strongest Counterattack. The name of this bar was also interesting. It was called Big Hidden. Obviously, it had the meaning of a small hidden in the forest, a big hidden in the world. After all, this bar was hidden in the middle of a busy city. The customers in the restaurants outside certainly did not know that there was such a high-class bar hidden behind the restaurants. The space of the bar was not small, and the decoration was also unique. There were 3 billiard tables in the middle, and there were larger sofas by the windows. There were also small tables for 4 people scattered around. On the north wall was a bar counter. The entire wall of wine cabinets was filled with all kinds of alcohol. As long as you could name it, it would have it all. At the bar counter, there were 2 bartenders, 1 male and 1 female. They were both good-looking. After all, those who could come here were not ordinary people, and the boss did not lack this bit of money. There was a corridor on the right that led deeper into the bar. There was a cigar room, a red wine room, and 3 small private rooms. However, all of these had to be booked in advance. There had to be at least 6 people. It was first come, first served, regardless of status. At this moment, Qin Ran and Qin Sheng had become the focus of all the people in the bar. Qin Ran and Qin Sheng did not care about these playful gazes. Qin Ran just continued to walk forward with Qin Sheng. A few of her childhood friends were playing billiards there. These childhood friends were none other than the ones who had accompanied Qin Ran to Shanghai to cause trouble. Other than Fantaji, who did not come, Zhangde and Ma Weiyang were both there. The other 2 were also good friends in the same circle. Seeing Qin Ran leading Qin Sheng in, they, who had already received the news, were not surprised at all. They just put down the cue sticks in their hands and walked slowly toward Qin Ran and Qin Sheng. Ma Weiyang, who was wearing a tight gray sweater that was embroidered with a perfect figure, said, "The sun rises from the west. Our first Miss Qin is going to announce a big news. After so many years, you finally have good news. My best friend can finally be laid off." Zhangde picked up the wine glass beside him, squinted his eyes, and said, Ran, the underground work is very secretive. We didn't even notice any loopholes. Amazing." A younger man chuckled and said, "Sister Ran, quickly introduce our brother-in-law to us. I'm lucky today." The young man, who was standing at the back and dressed in sportswear, did not say anything. He just looked at Qin Sheng and felt that it was not what everyone thought. This was not Sister Ran's temperament. You guys really didn't see anything? Qin Ran didn't know whether to laugh or cry. These people were too unreliable. Qin Sheng did not explain and just let them misunderstand. Anyway, this was his biological sister, and there was nothing to avoid. Ma Weiyang whispered, "What the hell? What else do you want to see? Do you want us to say that you're a perfect match? Ran, how did you become like this?" Zhangde frowned slightly and said, Ran, don't keep us in suspense. Introduce him to us." The others also stopped talking and waited for Qin Ran to give the final answer. Qin Ran took a deep breath and pulled Qin Sheng forward. She said, "Since you guys are so stupid, I can only reveal the answer to you. Let me formally introduce you. This handsome and talented little fresh meat is called Qin Sheng. He's my younger brother, my biological brother. You guys know about my biological brother." Her words were like 5 thunderbolts. Everyone was dumbfounded in an instant. Zhangde and Ma Weiyang were dumbfounded because they knew that such a person existed. This was the deepest wound in Qin Ran's heart. Back then, her mother passed away and her brother went missing. It was a huge blow to her. She was quiet for a long time. This group of people had tried many ways to help her gradually recover. All these years, no one had dared to mention this matter. It was just that after so many years, Qin Ran could not forget what had happened in the past, especially this brother of hers. He was the one she was most worried about. Everyone knew why Qin Rand did not date or marry. It was because she had once said that if she could not find her brother, she would spend the rest of her life alone. A few days before Fandaji got married, he drank too much and completely let go of his obsession with Qin Rand. However, he also hoped that Qin Rand could let go of the past and pursue her own happiness. Although he could not give Qin Rand happiness, he hoped to see her happy. However, Qin Rand's answer was still very firm. She would not get married if she could not find her brother. Fandaji was so angry that he almost cursed. Qin Rand left on the spot. Zhangde and the others almost got into a fight with Fandaji. If they had not stopped them, Fandaji's wedding would probably have been postponed. However, it had been more than 20 years since that incident. Everyone had long lost hope. After all, the Qin family was not an ordinary family. After so many years without finding her brother, the hope must be getting slimmer and slimmer. Hence, everyone sympathized with Qin Rand. Hence, at this moment, Zhangde and Ma Weiyang could not believe that this man in front of them was Qin Rand's missing biological brother. This was too unimaginable. It was as if a miracle had suddenly happened. They stared at Qin Sheng. The more they looked at him, the more they felt that the two of them were really similar. Moreover, they all knew Qin Sheng when he was young. Some of their memories were finally clear. Hence, their gazes and expressions changed from the initial confusion to shock, followed by doubt and confusion, and finally, surprise and excitement. As for the other two, they were confused because they had never heard that Sister Rand had a biological brother. They all knew that Sister Rand was Master Qin's only daughter. Ran, is he really your brother? Although Ma Weiyang had already recognized him, she still asked in disbelief. This was definitely big news. It was enough to blow up their small circle. Qin Rand smiled and said confidently, I guarantee it. When Ma Weiyang heard this, she directly pounced on Qin Sheng. Before Qin Sheng could come back to his senses, she had already hugged him and even kissed his face hard twice. She was just short of a kiss that would last for a century. People who did not know better would think that this was her biological brother who had been separated from her for many years. Oh, my little Shengzi, your sister Ponytail missed you so much. You're such a heartless guy. You're finally willing to come back. Ma Weiyang shouted excitedly. There was no doubt about her relationship with Qin Rand. They had been through a lot in the past few years and knew each other better than their parents. She remembered that whenever Qin Rand was sad when they were young, she would cry with Qin Rand. It was the same when they grew up. Hence, Ma Weiyang also had true feelings for Qin Sheng. Hence, she was so emotional that she had already hugged him and started crying. She was really happy for Qin Rand. This poor woman was finally not going to be tortured anymore. Oh my gosh, something big has happened, Zhangde mumbled to himself. He had to quickly make a phone call to inform those bastards. Such a lively scene, of course they could not miss it. He reckoned that even if he called the others, not many would believe him. Qin Sheng was somewhat at a loss because of the agitated Ma Weiyang. This sister was hanging on him like a koala bear. It should be known that this sister's figure was very hot, and her soft breasts were even intimately touching his chest. It was this sniffling that made him somewhat uncomfortable. Ma Weiyang was a little emotional. Qin Rand felt that there were too many people here. It was not suitable to stay for long. Before everyone understood what was going on, he said to Zhangde and the rest, Let's go to the private room to talk. It's not suitable here. Only then did Zhangde understand. He immediately ran to the bar counter and instructed the waiter. Luckily, there were not many guests tonight. The private rooms were all empty. Only then did everyone move to the private room. Along the way, Ma Weiyang held onto Qin Sheng's arm like an intimate couple and was reluctant to let go. Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. After Qin Rand and the rest walked into the private room, the people in the hall then withdrew their gazes. It was noisy just now, and they did not hear clearly what was going on. However, everyone could tell that the young man that Qin Rand had brought along was not simple. Otherwise, why would that group of people be so emotional? If Qin Sheng had paid attention, he would definitely have found a familiar person sitting at the table by the window. This familiar person was his classmate, Wei Li from Hangzhou. It was a pity that he did not have time to care about others. After Wei Li saw Qin Sheng, he did not stand up to greet him. He only observed Qin Sheng secretly. He did not expect to meet Qin Sheng here. This was a stronghold of the rich and powerful. The boss behind it was also not an ordinary person. If it were Han Su, after seeing Qin Sheng, he would definitely run over to greet him immediately. He did not care about those things. Wei Li was glad that he did not greet Qin Sheng, because for what happened today, it seemed that he was gradually unveiling Qin Sheng's mysterious veil. Brother Zhao, who were those people just now? Wei Li looked at his friend next to him and asked. The man called Brother Zhao also noticed that Wei Li had been staring at them. He was puzzled and asked, "Do you know them?" "I know the man who came in later. He is a classmate of the Tsinghua University Advanced course that I recently joined. I don't know the others," Wei Li said truthfully. Brother Zhao said thoughtfully, "Those people just now are regular customers here. Their relationship with Boss Li is not simple. Moreover, their backgrounds are also very deep. If you can build a relationship with them, it will be of great help to you in the future." Wei Li said in surprise, "How deep? Is their background even deeper than yours and third sister's?" Brother Zhao looked at the woman next to him, laughed, and shook his head. They are not at the same level at all. After hearing this, Wei Li was instantly excited. He subconsciously found a direction to build a relationship with them. He stood up with a smile and said, "Then should I go over and say hello?" Brother Zhao and third sister did not say anything and let Wei Li do what he wanted. If Wei Li could build a relationship with them, it would also be good for them. They were afraid that this guy would be rejected. However, it was not a bad thing to let him be at a disadvantage. Sijio City was not Hangzhou City. There were some circles that you could not squeeze into even if you broke your head. The threshold was too high. Wei Li, who had just arrived, thought that this was Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai, where he would be able to fit in as long as he knew each other. Chapter 371. What a slap in the face. The second update is here. I hope everyone will continue to vote for the strongest counterattack in vertical and horizontal's 2017 final inventory. Different cultures had different attitudes in different places. For example, in the Northeast, most people felt that money was everything. They felt that money was omnipotent and that nothing could be done without money. Many people became officials to earn money. Even a small divisional level official dared to earn hundreds of millions. Therefore, the atmosphere of bribery in the Northeast was very serious. Shandong, which was close to the Northeast, was the exact opposite. For thousands of years, it was the hometown of Confucius and Mencius. Even if many people wanted to earn money, their ultimate goal was to become an official. For example, that fake minister who bought his way from a businessman to become a deputy minister. Needless to say, how many political and military bigwigs had come from Shandong over the years. There was a joke that the greatest reward an elder in Shandong could give to a junior was that the child could become a high-ranking official when he grew up. Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai had different cultures from Sijio City. Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai focused on everyone who had money to earn. If there was a road to walk, everyone would walk together. Relationships were mutually beneficial, and everyone took what they needed. In the end, the benefits were maximized. However, in the circle of the rich and powerful in Sijio City, it was about background and strength. The threshold was very high, and the barriers were very strict. This was because everyone had a powerful force behind them. They didn't represent themselves, but the families behind them, and so on. Their identities were different from ordinary people. Most of them were very wary because they knew that many people got close to them only for the force behind them. Hence, those who could play in the same circle were either close since childhood, enough to trust each other, or the relationship between their parents, which was double protection. Hence, we can also see that there were many messy circles in Sijio City. Many people were happy to mingle in them, but how many of them could really get into the circle of the rich and powerful? Hence, although Brother Zhao and third sister came here often, they did not easily make friends with others, because they would be hated by others. If one's strength was not at that level, everything would be in vain. The private room in the bar was simply decorated. The original intention was just for people to chat or play werewolf or other board games. It was a private space that would not disturb other customers. After they went in, Ma Weiyang still did not let go of Qin Sheng. Qin Ran did not know whether to laugh or cry. She said, "Ma Wei, this is my brother, not yours. Can you be more reserved? If you like my brother, it's not too late to divorce him." Ponytail said carelessly, "Your brother is my brother. How can I not know how you've been living all these years? Besides, I haven't seen little Shengzi for more than 20 years. Of course, I have to take a good look at him. If you are willing, little Shengzi is also willing. I don't mind being his lover." "How shameless you are!" Qin Ran scolded with a smile. Qin Sheng had a helpless look on his face. How could this beauty be so direct and not care about his feelings at all? However, when the other two men saw Qin Sheng's embarrassed look and the bickering between Sister Ran and Ponytail, they laughed happily. However, their focus was naturally on Sister Ran's younger brother, who had suddenly appeared. Zhanda did not follow them in. He had to inform his buddies, such as Fandaji, etc. However, he did not know what was going on tonight. No one picked up his calls. Perhaps everyone was busy at the end of the year, such as work or social engagements. Nowadays, social engagements did not allow people to take out their phones, so it was understandable. Only Fandaji rushed over. At first, Fandaji did not believe it and said that Zhangde should not joke about such things. Zhangde explained again and again, but he did not believe it. It was only when Zhangde said that if he lied to him, he could do whatever he wanted that Fandaji rushed over. After the call, Zhangde returned to the private room and scolded. That idiot Fandaji did not believe it. "Why did you call them? I don't want others to know." Qin Ran frowned. She did not expect that Zhangde would tell others. This was unexpected. Zhangde immediately came to his senses and said, Oh, my bad, my bad. I was too happy." Fortunately, only Fandaji came. The others either did not pick up or did not believe me at all. Ma Weiyang did not bother to listen to Zhangde's explanation. She snorted and said, "Can you not be so impulsive? You haven't even figured out what's going on, and you're already saying this and that. No wonder you can't make it to the headquarters and can only be a mountain king in Sun Company." Zhangde muttered, "I think being a mountain king is good enough." Ma Weiyang glared at Zhangde. She couldn't be bothered to bicker with him. When they were together, it was always one of them mocking each other, but their relationship had never been distant. Ran, tell us, when did you find little Shengzi?" Ma Weiyang asked impatiently. Qin Ran did not know how to explain. After thinking for a while, she said, "Actually, we found him last year. The old man did not tell anyone. Even I only found out this year. I have to say that the old man is really good at keeping secrets. Uncle Qin is awesome. More than 20 years have passed, and we have all given up hope, but he's still persisted in looking for little Shengzi. Heaven really does not disappoint those who wait. Your Qin family has a successor." Zhangde was amazed. He did not admire many people, but Uncle Qin was definitely one. If it was not for his family's reluctance, he would have become Uncle Qin's godson long ago. Ma Weiyang also echoed and sighed. Uncle Qin is still Uncle Qin. Qin Ran continued. "Do you still remember when you accompanied me to Shanghai some time ago? Do you know why I caused trouble? It was to help my brother vent his anger. But this is not over yet. Sooner or later, I will settle old and new grudges with him." Hearing this, Ma Weiyang immediately stood up and said, "Damn, so that's what happened. That bastard actually dared to bully little Shengzi. He must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's guts. Ran, why didn't you say so earlier? If you had, I would have made him suffer. How could I have let him go so easily?" Zhangde narrowed his eyes. He finally understood what had happened last time. No wonder Qin Ran was so angry. He laughed coldly and said, "Oh, so that's what happened. I got it." Qin Ran was confused, but she could roughly understand what had happened. If she was not mistaken, her sister must have gone to Shanghai to find Yin Chaozong. "Sister, I will do this myself," Qin Sheng said casually. Qin Ran chuckled and said, "I know. I just feel sorry for you." Ma Weiyang said very seriously, Ran, little Shengzi is right. He should take revenge himself. Only then will he feel a sense of accomplishment. Little Shengzi, go ahead and take revenge in any way you want. As long as you don't kill or commit arson, no matter what happens, we will take care of it for you. You're not only Rant's biological brother, but also ours. Don't forget, we used to tease you when you were young. Zhangde also said in a neither light nor heavy tone, Little Shengzi, when are you going to Shanghai? Tell me, we still have many friends there. At this time, the other two young men also said, and us, we are all on the side of family. Qin Sheng finally understood why his sister had brought him here. She was looking for resources for him. When he really went to Shanghai, there would be a lot of resources that he could use. Thank you, brothers and sisters, Qin Sheng said sincerely. At this time, the door of the box was knocked from outside. Zhangde thought that Fantaji was nearby, so he opened the door excitedly. After opening the door, he found that it was not Fantaji, but a stranger. Zhangde was a little unhappy and said, Who are you looking for? Of course, it was Wei Li who came uninvited. He smiled and said, I'm looking for Qin Sheng. Hearing that it was Qin Sheng, Zhangde's attitude changed. He opened the door and let the man in. He said to Qin Sheng, Little Shengzi, he's looking for you. Although he had only met Qin Sheng a few times, he considered himself a friend. Wei Li called out in a friendly manner, Qin Sheng, it's really you. I didn't expect to see you here. Qin Sheng was such a smart person. When it came to scheming, he was no worse than anyone. It was just that sometimes he did not have enough luck and resources. Moreover, he was not familiar with Wei Li, so he said directly, Do I know you? Wei Li's expression changed instantly, and he said awkwardly, Qin Sheng, what do you mean? We are classmates. What Qin Sheng meant was that Zhangde already knew what was going on and more or less understood. He chuckled and said, Little Shengzi, you don't know him? Qin Sheng said indifferently, I don't know him. I'll count to 3. Get out of here, or you'll have to bear the consequences, Zhangde said to Wei Li. The others also glared at Wei Li. They did not like to be disturbed. Besides, there were rules here. It was a naked slap in the face. Wei Li looked embarrassed. He did not know how to deal with this situation. He did not expect Qin Sheng to say this, nor did he want to disturb them. He just came over to say hello and recognize a familiar face. He did not know why Qin Sheng said this, but since Qin Sheng had already said this, there was obviously no turning back. Of course, Wei Li did not want to offend this group of people in front of him. He quickly smiled and said, I'm sorry, I might have recognized the wrong person. I'm sorry to disturb you. I'll leave now, Wei Li said as he walked out. In the end, he even respectfully closed the door of the box. After closing the door, Wei Li looked disappointed and unhappy. But what could he do even if he was unhappy? He subconsciously thought of taking revenge on Qin Sheng and telling the news that Qin Sheng was in Beijing. But when he thought of Brother Zhao's words just now, he retreated. It was just one failure, and he did not lose anything. He did not believe that he could not knock down this door of Qin Sheng. When Wei Li returned to their position, Brother Zhao saw Wei Li's dejected look, as if he already knew the result. He laughed and said, Hit a wall. Wei Li was surprised and said, Brother Zhao, you already knew the result? Brother Zhao shook his head and said with a smile, Wei Li, sometimes you have to put away your cleverness. For this group of people, they will not take you seriously just because you are rich. They are much richer than your family, right? There are many who fall, run, and die. The water in Suzhou City is deep, you will know slowly. Wei Li was not angry at all. He smiled bitterly and said, Thank you for your advice, Brother Zhao. In the box, Qin Ran could feel that the atmosphere just now was not right. She asked in a low voice, Qin Sheng, do you know him? Qin Sheng did not deny it and said, Yes, he is a classmate of the advanced course. He is from Hangzhou. He knows what I did in Hangzhou, so I was just testing him. Qin Ran immediately understood. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. You are the same as the old man. Qin Sheng smiled bitterly and did not deny it. Chapter 372. To get very drunk, today's first update, I will continue to ask for votes for the strongest counterattack. The more votes everyone has, the more motivation Old Guan has to write. Everyone continued to chat. Qin Sheng had become the center of attention. Ma Weiyang and Zhang De seemed to have endless questions for him. They were more concerned about him than Qin Ran, which made him feel embarrassed. After all, they hadn't seen him for more than 20 years. They wanted to know where he had been all these years, how he had been, and whether he had suffered or not. The other two men, Yin Hao and Yang Shihua, were basically listening to them. Occasionally, they would say a few words, neither spoiling the fun nor disturbing the atmosphere. They all entered this circle later, more or less related to each other. However, they were young and kept a low profile in this circle. It was extremely difficult for Wei Li to squeeze into this circle. However, Qin Sheng was accepted easily. This was not only because of Qin Ran or Qin Chang'an, but also because of the good karma accumulated by several generations of the Qin family in Siju City. So you have been in Xi'an for so many years. Grandpa Qin hid so well. Why couldn't we find him? Hearing that Qin Sheng had been living in Xi'an, Ma Weiyang felt it was unbelievable. She thought Grandpa Qin had hidden Qin Sheng in some deep forest. Otherwise, why couldn't they find him after so many years? Speaking of Grandpa Qin, Zhang De immediately asked, "Little Sheng, you are back. Where is Grandpa Qin? My grandpa said he still owes him a pot of good tea." Qin Sheng sighed and said sadly, "Grandpa passed away a few years ago." Hearing this, Zhang De couldn't help but regret bringing this up. Ma Weiyang also stared at Zhang De. Qin Ran also remembered this. During this period, she had only cared about Qin Sheng. Apart from knowing that Grandpa Qin had passed away, she didn't ask about anything else. Maybe it was because she didn't have any feelings for Grandpa. She had only seen him a few times since she was a child, unlike Qin Sheng who had lived with Grandpa for so many years. "Where's Grandpa buried?" Qin Ran broke the silence and asked. The others were relieved. Qin Sheng answered honestly, under Mount Zhongnan. Qin Ran nodded and said, "When you have time, let's go back. No matter what, he is our grandpa." Okay, Qin Sheng nodded. The spring festival was coming. Of course, he had to go back to Xi'an to report that he was safe. He could not let Annie Wang and the others worry about him every year. Speaking of this, Qin Sheng could not help but think of what had happened to Uncle Lin. Back then, Uncle Lin had been framed and wronged, which led to him going bankrupt and being sent to prison. In the past, he did not have this ability. But now that he had figured out his background, he should be able to think of a way. However, he did not know how to tell Qin Chang'an about it. At that moment, the door to the private room was pushed open again, but this time, there was no knock. Everyone heard a familiar voice shouting, "Zhang De, where is little Shengzi? If you dare to lie to me and make me rush over from the West Third Loop, I'll beat you up today." This was none other than Fandaji, who had been tricked by Zhang De to come over. Fandaji was at home with his wife and child. A call from Zhang De made him rush over in a hurry. He did not even have time to change his clothes. He just casually put on a down jacket and rushed over. The atmosphere was originally a little sad, but Fandaji's timely arrival broke the deadlock. Everyone stared at Fandaji, whose hair was messy, as if they were looking at a monster. "Brother Fan, did you just come back from a famine?" Inhao asked, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Fandaji said impatiently, "Don't talk nonsense." Then he stared at Zhang De and asked, "Where is little Shengzi?" Zhang De only wanted to scold him for being an idiot. There were only 6 people here, and he knew 5 of them. The last one was, of course, little Shengzi. Moreover, which man could sit between Ran Ran and Ponytail? However, Zhang De understood Fandaji's feelings. He pointed at Qin Sheng and chuckled. "Isn't little Shengzi right here?" Fandaji stared at him again and again. He could not believe that the man in front of him was little Shengzi. When he left, he was just a little kid. More than 20 years had passed, and now he was a grown man. He definitely could not be sure. Therefore, Fandaji looked at Qin Ran and asked, "Ran Ran, is he really little Shengzi?" "Yes." Qin Ran nodded slowly. Fandaji might not believe other people's words, but Qin Ran had already nodded to confirm it. He definitely believed that the man in front of him was little Shengzi. He had thought that Zhang De was fooling him, but he did not expect that he would really find little Shengzi. This huge surprise made Fandaji, who was usually very calm, at a loss. He hugged him and patted his back fiercely. "You little brat, you're finally back. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." Everyone could understand Fandaji's actions. After all, his feelings for Qin Ran were the most complicated. He naturally hoped that Qin Ran would be happy in this life, but he also knew that if she could not untie this knot in her heart, she would not be happy. Now that she had found little Shengzi, Qin Ran's knot in her heart had also been untied. In the future, there would not be anything holding her back. She could also find her own happiness. Fandaji was happy from the bottom of his heart. After Fandaji calmed down, he was pulled aside by Zhang De. He knew that Fandaji was like them and definitely had a lot of things to ask. Of course, there were some things that they would take the initiative to tell Fandaji later, such as the last time they went to Shanghai. "It's rare for us to be so happy today. We must drink to our heart's content," Fandaji said generously. He had long forgotten the promise he had made to his wife to abstain from drinking for 3 months. He could do anything but abstain from drinking. He kept making promises and breaking them. Who asked him to be fated with wine in this life? Life must be enjoyed to the fullest. Qin Ran said disapprovingly, "My brother said he wanted a drink, so I brought them to you. Otherwise, why do you think I brought him here? Who knew that you guys would drag me to talk so much nonsense?" Ma Weiyang clicked her tongue and said, "Wow, it seems that our little Shengzi can hold his liquor well. All right, since little Shengzi wants to drink, we must not go home until we're drunk. If anyone screws up, don't say that you're my friend in the future." Zhang De deliberately said, half-jokingly, "I'm just afraid that we can't keep little Shengzi company. Don't forget that he grew up in Xin. The Northwest Wolf is not for show." Inhao laughed and said, "It's okay. There's so many of us today. I don't believe that we can't keep him company. What do you guys want to drink? I'll go out and get it for you. Little Shengzi, what kind of wine do you want to drink? Just tell me. As long as you can name it, I promise I'll let you drink it. If there's no wine here, I'll find it for you all over Beijing." Ma Weiyang liked Qin Sheng for no reason. After all, he was Qin Ran's brother. Qin Sheng was very clear that these friends of his sister were real friends, not a bunch of scoundrels. They might have different identities and different masks outside, but when they were together, they looked very casual and free, without any airs. Therefore, Qin Sheng said straightforwardly, "Beer, white, red wine, I could drink them all." Hearing his domineering words, Ma Weiyang liked him even more. She directly shouted, "Haozi, bring the wine." The atmosphere instantly reached its peak. Inhao and Yang Shihua laughed and went out to bring the wine. Li Bai said, "When is the moon bright? Ask the blue sky with wine, and only wine can make one forget one's worries." Su Shi once said, "When will the moon be bright? I ask the blue sky with a cup of wine, and only wine can make me forget my worries." There were so many poems about wine. In China's thousands of years of traditional culture, wine was indispensable. People drank when they were happy, and they drank when they were unhappy. Only wine could make a person's mood reach its peak. Only wine could let a person vent all his emotions and forget everything. Therefore, on such an occasion tonight, they would definitely not go home until they were drunk. There were no fathers and sons on the battlefield, and no brothers in the wine house. Qin Sheng really wanted to get drunk tonight because he had been depressed for too long. He had been on tenterhooks all the time, not to mention drinking. But tonight, he didn't need to worry about anything anymore. He could get completely drunk. He didn't think about anything, didn't care about anything, and just drank to his heart's content. He really wanted to know what it would be like when he was completely drunk. Even if he was a mess, even if he lost his mind and acted like a drunkard, his sister would clean up the mess for him and send him home in the end. This was the first time in his life that he had been treated like this. Since Qin Sheng was so determined, the ending was self-evident. That night, except for Qin Ran, who only drank a little, the others were basically dead drunk. Qin Sheng was completely put down by them. He even went to the toilet to vomit a few times. When he came back, he drank and fell asleep. But Qin Sheng, who was asleep, had a smile on his face. Ma Weiyang also fell asleep while drinking. She was a good drinker, so she wouldn't get drunk. But in order to help Qin Sheng, she, Fandaji, Zhang De, and the others had an internal conflict. That was why she ended up like this. Fortunately, although the others were drunk, they weren't completely unconscious. Qin Ran had asked these people how to deal with the funeral before drinking, so she had arranged everything in advance. Those who wanted to go home will be sent home directly. Those who didn't want to go home had already booked a room in the Guamao Hotel nearby and sent someone to send them. After making arrangements for these people, Qin Ran took Qin Sheng back to the Sihiyuan. After all, it was not far from Wangfujing. Qin Ran had also called Uncle Gongsun, asking him to make a pot of tea to sober up and a bowl of porridge to warm up his stomach. In the Sihiyuan, Qin Chang'an had already gone to bed. If there was nothing else, his work and rest were very regular, almost never past 11 o'clock. So when Qin Ran took Qin Sheng back, only Gongsun was waiting. Qin Ran had a room in the Sihiyuan. It was already so late, so Qin Ran naturally wouldn't leave. As for Qin Sheng, before knowing that he was coming back, Gongsun had already asked people to tidy up the room next to Qin Ran's. Everything in the room was new. 2 bodyguards carried Qin Sheng in. Qin Ran originally wanted to let Qin Sheng drink some tea and porridge. But looking at the situation, she was afraid that he wouldn't wake up. It was better to let Qin Sheng sleep directly. After settling Qin Sheng down, Qin Ran came out of the room. Standing in the corridor outside, Gongsun muttered, Ran, why did you let him drink so much? He wants to drink, so I let him drink. When he has drunk enough, he will feel comfortable, Qin Ran said disapprovingly. She hoped that Qin Sheng would not hold back his feelings and try to vent them all so that he could live a relaxed life. Chapter 373. Petty Tricks. Today's second update is here. Please vote for the strongest comeback. 5 free votes every day. Vote for the best work. In the morning, Qin Chang'an got up the earliest. It was still snowing outside, and some places on the road were frozen. Qin Chang'an did not go out to run, but continued to exercise in the basement gym. When Qin Chang'an came out after jogging, Gongsun was already waiting for him in the dining room. Qin Chang'an found that today's breakfast was richer than usual. He asked confusedly, "What day is it today? Why is the breakfast so sumptuous?" Gongsun poured milk for Qin Chang'an and smiled bitterly. The sister and brother upstairs haven't woken up yet. Qin Chang'an's expression changed slightly. He did not expect that Qin Sheng and Qin Ran stayed in the Sihiyuan last night, which was quite surprising. He thought that the sister and brother would not come back after they left. This was the first time that Qin Sheng stayed in the Sihiyuan since he returned to Beijing, and Qin Ran also came back to live. This news made Qin Chang'an feel quite comfortable. Finally, he felt that this Sihiyuan was like a home, not just his residence. If both Qin Ran and Qin Sheng could move back here and live there forever, he would naturally be happier. Gongsun continued to explain, "They came back at 2:30 last night, so I did not disturb you." Qin Sheng was a mess, and Qin Ran was also a little confused. I guess they're still asleep now. They drank? Qin Chang'an frowned, but did not say anything more. There was nothing wrong with young people drinking. Wasn't he like this when he was young? Gongsun hesitated for a moment and said, "How about I wake them up for breakfast?" "No, let them sleep for a while. You go out with me later, there are still some things to deal with today," Qin Chang'an said casually. Gongsun agreed, and they sat down to eat breakfast. When Qin Sheng woke up, it was already 10 o'clock. He opened his eyes, his mouth was dry, and he had a splitting headache. His stomach was also a little upset. Qin Sheng was shocked to find that he was in a strange environment. He subconsciously broke out in a cold sweat and sat up abruptly. When he recovered his memory, Qin Sheng let out a long sigh of relief. It was a false alarm. He thought it was the same situation as before, where he had to stay sober every time he got drunk. The situation last night was different, because he drank with his sister and her friends last night. No matter how drunk he was, his sister would take care of him. Qin Sheng did not know where he was, but he had a rough idea in his heart. He put on his clothes, got out of bed, pushed open the door, and walked out. When he saw the yard outside, he realized that he had finally returned to the Sihiyuan last night. "Young master, you're up." The servant at the door greeted him respectfully. Qin Sheng was still not used to this form of address. He smiled bitterly and nodded. "Where's my sister?" "Miss Chin just got up. She's waiting for you downstairs for breakfast." The maid, who seemed to be in her 30s, replied casually. All of them had worked for the Chin family for many years, and the Chin family had treated them well, both in terms of salary and other arrangements. Qin Sheng stretched himself and said, "Tell her that I'm going to take a shower." Qin Sheng went back to his room and took a shower, but he did not change his clothes. His body reeked of alcohol and cigarettes. However, he did not smoke last night because he could tell that his sister did not like the smell of cigarettes. The others also restrained themselves, so he did not smoke. In the dining room, when Qin Ran, who had already recovered, saw Qin Sheng walk in, she laughed and said, "Are you uncomfortable?" "Uncomfortable?" Qin Sheng nodded honestly. It was really uncomfortable. He had a terrible headache, and his stomach was particularly uncomfortable. Qin Ran stared at him and said, "Do you know how to be uncomfortable? Last night, when you were drinking with Zhangde and the others, where was your arrogant look? Why didn't I see that you were uncomfortable?" Qin Sheng giggled. This was the mood when he drank. He drank to his heart's content. If he had to pretend to be polite when drinking, he might as well not drink at all. "Will you still drink in the future?" Qin Ran asked. Qin Sheng sat next to Qin Ran happily and said, "You won't believe me even if I say no, but I really felt good yesterday. I should say that I completely blacked out. I don't remember what happened after that. By the way, how are they?" "Ponytail drank a lot of alcohol for you. Like you, she blacked out. In the end, she was picked up by her husband. The others are more or less the same. Those who should go home, and those who can't go home stay in the hotel. I just called them. Those who should go to work are still working, and those who should sleep are still sleeping." Qin Ran shook her head helplessly and said. Qin Sheng picked up a glass of orange juice and said, "Sister Ponytail is so nice. If it were not for her last night, I might have already blacked out. What do you think? She's my best friend. Of course, she will be nice to you. You definitely don't remember that she insisted on introducing a girlfriend to you last night. She said that she was the daughter of an aunt in her husband's family. It was a mess. You even asked her to give your number." Qin Sheng was stunned. Qin Sheng was dumbfounded. He did not expect that the future of the short film would be like this. He asked in surprise, "Really? Sister, don't lie to me. I'm an upright person. Besides, I have a girlfriend." "I know. I have seen her," Qin Ran said casually. Qin Sheng fell silent and did not say anything. Since he sent a message to Lin Su to tell her that he was safe before he went to Tsingtao from Zhejiang last time, he had not contacted Lin Su since then. He knew that Lin Su, who was in Ningbo, must be worried about him. He also knew that Lin Su must be waiting for him. However, so many things had happened recently that he could not accept it for a while. He could not calm down and had no time to contact anyone. During this period, he finally recovered. Qin Sheng thought that he should tell Lin Su about it, so that she could be completely at ease. However, Qin Sheng did not have time to see Lin Su now. Moreover, he had promised Lin Su that he would go to Ningbo to pick her up in person. Now, he had the capital to face the Lin family directly. So when he went to pick up Lin Su, it was the time for him to propose marriage to the Lin family. He wanted to see the faces of the Lin family. Qin Sheng could understand that the Lin family had never taken him seriously, but it would be a lie to say that he did not have any resentment. Although this society was so realistic, no one could bully a young man for being poor. Qin Ran thought that she had mentioned Qin Sheng's sad story. She comforted him and said, "I know something. She is a good girl and deserves your lifetime protection. When you want to see her, I will accompany you to pick her up." "Okay." Qin Sheng nodded with relief. After breakfast, Qin Ran took Qin Sheng to the balcony on the second floor to bask in the sun and drink tea for a while. When it was almost time, she sent Qin Sheng to Tongning 1. After all, Qin Sheng had classes in the afternoon. In less than a month, it would be the new year. Today was the last class before the new year, so basically all the students came. Because there was a banquet in the evening, Qin Sheng did not refuse out of politeness. On the way to Tsinghua University, Qin Sheng had already called the assistant of the head teacher to explain that he had something to do at home in the morning. 4 rich and noble students like them, the assistant could understand. After all, they were all busy. When Qin Sheng walked into the classroom, Han Su, who was sitting next to him, had already arrived. Today, this guy finally did not wear a hip-hop style anymore. He changed into a fairly formal black coat, which was a reasonable match. He looked much more sunny and handsome than before. After seeing Qin Sheng, Han Su immediately joked, "Qin Sheng, why didn't you come to class in the morning? Was it because you were too tired last night and couldn't get up in the morning? Young man, take care of your health. Don't always do that." Nothing good came out of filthy mouth. Qin Sheng did not bother to answer him. He directly scolded him with a smile. F***ck off. Han Su had long been used to Qin Sheng's style. He was not afraid of being scolded. If he was scolded, he would treat him as a real brother. If people flattered him everywhere, he would feel really bored. It is said that you can bring a female companion to the banquet in the evening. Do you have a female companion? Do you want me to find one for you? You will definitely be satisfied, Han Su said, very willing to help others. Qin Sheng directly shook his head and said, no need, because he was going to worship his mother tomorrow, and it was also the first time for him to see his mother after returning to Beijing. Qin Sheng only planned to show up tonight and then go straight back to rest. At this time, Wei Li, who had been severely slapped in the face by Qin Sheng last night, came over again shamelessly. He did not have a conflict with Qin Sheng because of what happened last night. Seeing Wei Li, who was walking over, Qin Sheng sighed in his heart. This guy is much more shameless than Han Su. Han Su was at most heartless, but this guy was the real shrewd one. Qin Sheng, let's talk, Wei Li said directly. Han Su looked up at Wei Li. He did not have a good impression of him, so he did not bother to talk to him. He knew that Wei Li and Qin Sheng seemed to know each other, so he lowered his head and continued to play the game. Qin Sheng found it funny and said, what is there to talk about between us? Qin Sheng, I've said it before. I'm willing to be friends with you. You may have misunderstood me, Wei Li explained slowly. He really did not know why Qin Sheng had such great hostility towards him. Could it be that there was something wrong with the way he spoke that day? Qin Sheng opened his notebook and read the financial analysis case in the afternoon. He replied casually, you think too much. Then why did you pretend not to know me when I went over to say hello to you last night? Wei Li was a little confused. If Qin Sheng had said that he was his friend yesterday, he would have known that group of people, and their relationship would have been further improved. Qin Sheng squinted and raised his head, saying, it seems to be impolite to disturb others. Besides, how can I not know your little thoughts? Most people do not have great wisdom, but are full of small tricks. Qin Sheng's words made Wei Li's face change, as if he had been seen through. He did not know how to respond to Qin Sheng for a moment. Qin Sheng said with interest, we can be friends, but at least I have to know how we can be friends. What value do you have to me? This sentence was a breakthrough for Wei Li. He could not help thinking about the meaning of Qin Sheng's words. The more he thought about it, the more interesting he felt, but he did not understand it. At this time, the teacher today came. Wei Li left silently and could only continue to think about it in his heart. In the evening, Qin Sheng and Han Su went to the last dinner before the new year, which was held in a nearby 5-star hotel. Han Su's female companion was still the beauty from the law school. Qin Sheng did what he said and did not bring a female companion. After entering, Qin Sheng said hello to the head teacher and familiar classmates and left after a short time. The next morning, when Qin Sheng took a shower and changed in his solemn clothes, Qin Ran was already waiting for him outside in her car. Chapter 374. An Unfilial Son. Today, I hope you will continue to vote for Lao Guan. After Qin Sheng's mother passed away, the Zhu family and the Qin family argued over where to bury her. The Zhu family wanted to bury her in the Babaishan public cemetery. After all, the 2 elders of the Zhu family would be buried there after 100 years. In this way, their daughter could be closer to them. This was also their selfishness. But how could the Qin family agree? Wasn't old Master Qin's greatest forte in this lifetime the art of acupuncture? How could such a big thing be decided by the Zhu family? He had to consider the Qin family and find acupoints for his daughter-in-law. Therefore, old Master Qin traveled around Beijing and finally found a good tomb at the foot of the Great Wall in Huairou. In his words, the deceased in the tomb would be happy and comfortable in their next life. At the same time, it would be beneficial to their relatives in the world, such as Lively's children. Therefore, it was not without reason that Qin Chang'an's career had reached the peak in recent years. However, there were some variables in this tomb. Not everything was absolute. This had something to do with the reason why the old master had brought Qin Sheng away. Only the old master knew it in his heart, although others did not understand it. Old Master Qin was a real tiger man who hid in the world. However, this kind of person was destined to have a hard life. He wandered from place to place and never had a rest. When he was old, he would die in a foreign land, unable to return to his roots. But for old Master Qin, this life was worth it. Some people didn't care about how long they lived, but what they had experienced. Old Master Qin belonged to this kind of person. He was used to the ups and downs of too many great storms, the fate of a nation, the fate of a family, and the fate of every ordinary person. Those who were in high positions could only die nameless, and those who were unknown ended up in the imperial court. He was a person who peaked at the destiny of heaven and had seen the vicissitudes of life and the joys and sorrows of partings and reunions. God had already given him face by allowing him to live for so long. Therefore, it was worth it. He didn't care about what people would say about him. In the end, the Zhu family agreed with old Master Qin's decision, even though this place was too remote at that time. It could be said to be the wilderness where no one lived. Even Qin Chang'an had opposed the idea at that time. But how could he persuade old Master Qin? Old Master Zhu believed in old Master Qin's ability. After all, old Master Qin was an authority in this field, so he finally nodded and agreed. More than 20 years had passed, and the land of the motherland had been turned upside down. This place was no longer so desolate. A large cemetery had been built not far away, but the feng shui of this place was still a little worse. Not everyone had the same cultivation as old Master Qin. When Qin Ran drove Qin Sheng to the foot of the mountain, Gong Sun was already waiting there. He had been familiar with what to prepare over the years. However, in addition to Gong Sun, there was another car parked by the side. When Qin Ran parked the car, a middle-aged couple got out of the car. They were none other than Qin Ran and Qin Sheng's uncle and aunt. Qin Ran had called her uncle last night and told him that today was the anniversary of her mother's death. She wanted to take this opportunity to bring Qin Sheng to visit her mother. Qin Sheng had agreed, but he didn't expect his uncle to come back. He didn't say anything on the phone last night. After Qin Ran got out of the car, she walked to the two elders excitedly and said, "Uncle, Aunt, why are you here?" Zhu Weigua, who was dressed in casual clothes and a black coat, smiled and said, "Today is your mother's birthday. Qin Chang'an can't come, but you can replace him. I have to come. I haven't seen my sister for a long time. I want to report to her about the recent situation of the Zhu family, so that she can rest assured." Zhu Weigua's wife, Wu Yajun, said gently, Ran, we didn't plan to come. But this morning, your uncle said that he dreamed of your mother last night. Your mother asked us to take care of you and your brother. So we came here, she said gently. This woman's temperament was especially graceful and elegant. She looked kind and happy. Some people's lives were so good. Qin Ran smiled happily. In front of the elders, she was like a child who couldn't grow up. She knew that her uncle and aunt loved her the most, so she pulled Qin Sheng and said in a hurry, "Qin Sheng, call me Aunt. Aunt bought you a lot of new clothes when you were young." Wu Yajun looked at Qin Sheng and felt a little touched. However, she restrained her emotions and did not show too much excitement. She came this morning because she wanted to see Qin Sheng. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Sheng had just come back in a bad state, Wu Yajun would have come with Zhu Weigua on the same day. "Aunt," Qin Sheng said calmly. He was used to calling strangers in this way because they were all his relatives. They must have had a deep relationship in the past. However, after so many years, time had forgotten too many things. Wu Yajun gently hugged Qin Sheng, touched his hair, and smiled. "In the blink of an eye, you've grown so big. I thought I would never see you again in this life. Fortunately, God is not so cruel. Qin Sheng also comforted his aunt and said, Aunt, don't worry. I won't leave again, and I won't let you worry anymore. Good boy, good boy. Qin Sheng was so sensible. Wei Ajun was very happy. Finding Qin Sheng, the biggest stone in the heart of the whole Zhu family, was finally relieved. Zhu Weigua thought it was almost time, so he said, let's go in first. After we finish our work, you can catch up during lunch. Wei Ajun let go of Qin Sheng, but still touched his cheek reluctantly. Qin Sheng was not used to being treated as a child recently. It took more than 10 minutes to walk from the side of the road to find Qin Sheng's mother's tomb. A few years ago, the surrounding area began to be developed, and some people wanted to occupy this place. Fortunately, Qin Chang'an knew it early and finally bought this piece of land with money through his connections, which could be regarded as a relief. Nominally, it was a tree farm, but in fact, except for a mausoleum keeper, there was no one else here. This mausoleum keeper was an old man from a nearby village. He was lonely and had nothing to do, so Qin Chang'an arranged for him to live here. In fact, there was nothing much to do. He just went there every day to make sure that no one would disturb him. The old man knew that at this time every year, people would come to pay their respects to the woman, so he waited at the gate early in the morning. He almost remembered all the people of the Zhu and Qin families and knew when they would come. Every year, Qin Chang'an would come on this day, but this year, Qin Chang'an was not here. He was surprised and asked, Lao Sun, why didn't Lao Qin come? Brother Gua, Lao Qin has something to do today. This year, he asked his son and daughter to come here. Gong Sun explained casually. He had a good relationship with Brother Gua, who was the mausoleum keeper and often arranged people to send things over. Brother Gua was an honest man who remembered the Qin family's kindness, so he felt more at ease here. The old man, called Brother Gua, was already 63 years old, but he was quite energetic. When he had nothing to do, he would wander around the mountain, and his health was better than that of the old people of his age. Qin Ran, Zhu Weigua, and Wei Ajun all knew this old man, so they greeted him politely. Hearing Gongsun's words, Lao Gua frowned and said, her son? He had met all the people of the Zhu and Qin families, but it was the first time that he heard that the woman who was buried here had a son. He had been guarding here for nearly 10 years, but had never seen the woman's son, so he was very surprised. On the way, Qin Ran had already told Qin Sheng about the old man. For Qin Sheng, it was a great favor for him to guard his mother here and not be disturbed by others. Therefore, Qin Sheng was very respectful to the old man and said politely, Hello, Uncle Gua. Thank you for your hard work these years. Although Lao Gua didn't understand, he smiled and said, Not at all, it's my duty. Of course, Gongsun wouldn't explain anything to Lao Gua. He would ask him later. He chuckled and said, Lao Gua, you go ahead. We'll go in. The group of people continued to walk forward. After passing through the forest and a small stream, they finally saw the lonely grave not far away. Compared to the unremarkable grave of old Master Qin at the foot of Mount Zhongnan, this grave was clearly more imposing. The grave was surrounded by bricks and tiles, and there was a 1-meter-high tombstone in front of it. The whole grave was surrounded by green pines and cypresses, and the surroundings were clean and tidy. It was winter, so all the trees had withered, and the flowers and grass had all withered. It looked a bit desolate. In spring, when everything woke up, it could be said to be a fairyland on earth. From spring to late autumn, different flowers and plants bloomed all over the mountains and fields. Because Qin Sheng's mother liked flowers, Qin Chang'an planted all kinds of flowers and plants here that could survive. When they walked to the front of the grave, the atmosphere became a bit sad. Qin Sheng stared at the tombstone in front of him, on which was his mother's photo and name. The photo was still the most beautiful one he had seen in the old house. The words Tomb of the Loving Mother Zhu Qinghuan were engraved below, and there was a blank space beside it. Qin Sheng knew that it was left by Qin Chang'an. This grave must be a joint grave, and Qin Chang'an would naturally be buried here when he was old. Compared to the time when he saw his mother's photo in the old house, Qin Sheng felt more emotional standing in front of the grave this time. No words could express his inner excitement. Gongsun started to put the fruits and flowers on the table, while Qin Ran took out the incense paper that she had prepared. Zhu Weiguo and Wu Yajun stood at the side, looking around to see if there was anything that needed to be cleaned up. Then they stared at Qin Sheng and Qin Ran. Zhu Weiguo was also a bit depressed. His sister had passed away for so many years, but he often thought of his sister's voice and smile, as if she was still alive. If she was still alive, how happy she would be, and Qin Sheng would not be taken away by old Master Qin. With the current status of the Qin family, his sister could enjoy her old age in peace. Zhu Weiguo sighed. His sister was the smartest woman in the whole Zhu family, but it was a pity that she had a hard life. Wu Yajun held her husband's arm, but she did not say anything to comfort him. She had said it many times over these years. After Gongsun put everything on the table, he retreated to the side. Qin Ran first lit the paper money, ignoring Qin Sheng, who was in a daze next to her. She murmured while burning the paper money, "Mom, I've finished my task. I found your brother. Don't blame my father in the future. He has suffered more than anyone else these years. As for the future, you don't have to worry about it. I'll help you take care of my brother. I know you love this son the most, more than you love me. I used to be jealous, but later I realized how lucky I am." When the paper money was about to burn out, Qin Ran lit the incense and handed it to Qin Sheng. "Okay, don't be in a daze. Light the incense for our mother." Qin Sheng came to his senses and took the incense. After bowing 3 times, he inserted the incense into the incense burner in front of the tombstone. Qin Ran knelt down and kowtowed first, followed by Qin Sheng. After Qin Ran kowtowed, she got up, but Qin Sheng still knelt on the ground. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Mom, your unfilial son, Qin Sheng, is back to see you. Rest in peace." In a word, those who heard it would be sad and shed tears. Chapter 375. Chapter 374, Guarding the Mausoleum. Second update, asking for monthly votes. By the way, please vote for the best work, the strongest counterattack. Qin Sheng had said what he wanted to say in the old house that day, but his feelings at that time were not as deep as when he was kneeling in front of his mother's grave at this moment. His mother had been waiting for him in this lonely grave for more than 20 years in the remote suburbs in the wild mountains. It was not hard to imagine how Qin Sheng felt. It was said that when a child traveled 1,000 miles, his mother would worry about him. He had been away from Sijio City for more than 20 years. Had his mother been worried and unable to rest in peace for more than 20 years? "You grew up with me, and I grew old with you." This was the most romantic promise between parents and children. It was a pity that Qin Sheng and his mother did not have such a chance at all. How sad it was. There were many regrets in life, and some of them could be made up for as long as you were willing. However, some of them could not be changed at all. Regret was regret. Qin Sheng knelt in front of the grave and did not want to get up. He continued, "Mom, you have been gone for more than 20 years, but I have never come to see you. I hope you can forgive me for being unfilial. I know you have been thinking about me for more than 20 years, and I have made you worry. I will come to see you often in the future and accompany you all the time, so that I can make up for the 20 years. Qin Ran could not stand it anymore. She was really afraid that she could not help crying again. She held Qin Sheng and said, "Brother, get up. Our mother will not blame you. She knows that you have suffered more than her in the past 20 years. Now you are back, and our family is finally reunited. This is better than anything else. Our mother is happy from the bottom of her heart." At this time, Wu Yajun also walked over and held Qin Sheng. She said, "Sheng, don't kneel on the ground. It is cold. If you get sick, your mother will feel sorry for you." Qin Sheng was also embarrassed to be supported by his sister and aunt, so he stood up slowly. He seemed to see his mother in the photo, smiling at him, and his eyes were full of tenderness. After the worship, Qin Ran was ready to leave with Qin Sheng. However, Qin Sheng asked him to wait here for a while. He wanted to walk around and see how the environment here was, so Gongsun accompanied him. Qin Ran and Zhu Weiguo stood there and waited for Qin Sheng. Zhu Weiguo frowned and said, "How is it? How is the relationship between the father and son recently? Has there been any progress? Wu Yajun also cared about it and waited for Qin Ran's answer. Although the Zhu family did not have a good relationship with Qin Chang'an, she still hoped that there would not be too many conflicts between the father and the son. After all, they had been separated for more than 20 years. Qin Chang'an was already so old. How many years could they spend together in the future? Qin Ran held her aunt's arm and said with a smile, "It's much better than before. The night before yesterday, I took Qin Sheng back to the Sihiyuan for dinner. Qin Sheng didn't refuse. During dinner, they even drank a bottle of white wine." Upon hearing such news, Zhu Weiguo said happily, "Well, it looks good. It's good that there's progress." At this time, Wu Yajun asked, Ran, didn't you ask your father what he has planned for Qin Sheng now that he's back? Do you want Qin Sheng to take over?" Zhu Weiguo didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he replied, "Do you still need to ask? That guy has worked hard all his life to accumulate such a huge foundation. Do you think he will hand it over to others? I know what you want to say. Don't worry, he won't hand Qin Sheng over to our Zhu family to cultivate." Wu Yajun muttered, "What's so good about doing business? The risk factor is too high. Although he's doing well now, there are many unknown dangers hidden behind him. I think it's a good choice for Qin Sheng to enter politics or join the army. Give him enough time to practice. With the help of our Zhu family's connections, he may have great achievements in the future." Zhu Weiguo shook his head with a bitter smile as he said, "Then you have to persuade Qin Chang'an first. After all, he's not our son. It's not up to us to arrange his path." Wu Yajun sighed and looked at Qin Ran. Ran, tell me, what does your father think?" Seeing that Qin Sheng was so favored and was still the same as before, Qin Ran was quite happy. Everyone cared about Qin Sheng so much, which would make him feel the warmth of family love. He would also have a sense of existence in this big family. Qin Ran said, "Aunt, you know my father's temper. He can't wait to retire. Now that Qin Sheng has finally come back, of course he will arrange for him to take over. Besides, I think based on my understanding of Qin Sheng, he may not like a life with too many restrictions, such as politics or joining the army. Relatively speaking, doing business gives him more freedom, and it allows him to do what he wants to do. Some time ago, my father arranged for him to attend an advanced course in the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University. I don't think he has any resistance at all. He always attends classes on time and listens carefully. When he has no classes, he also listens in other departments of the School of Economics and Management. It shows that he is very interested in doing business." She also hoped that Qin Sheng could take over her father's position and inherit the Qin family's business. This starting point would be much higher than others. If he wanted to enter politics or join the army, he had to take it step by step. Even with the help of the Zhu family, it was impossible for him to make a big step. Since Qin Ran had said so, Wu Yajun didn't say anything more. She just let Qin Sheng make his own choice. They continued to wait here for a while. Half an hour later, Gong Sun and Qin Sheng finally came back. Then Qin Sheng announced a decision. He looked at everyone with a smile and said firmly, "Sister, uncle, aunt, I won't go back with you. I happen to be free before the spring festival, so I want to stay here to observe mourning for my mother. I want to make up for the regret of not being by her side and visiting her all these years." This news shocked everyone. They looked at each other and didn't know what to say for a while. However, Qin Sheng's filial piety moved them very much. Qin Ran certainly didn't want Qin Sheng to stay here. The environment here was so hard. So she objected, "Qin Sheng, I know you are filial, but it is too hard here. You don't have to do this. I think our mother will feel sorry for you. Elder sister, this bit of suffering is nothing to me. Uncle Guo won't live here for long. I'll just squeeze with him. Anyway, it's only for a month. I want to spend some time with our mother," Qin Sheng said sincerely. It could be seen that no one could change his mind. Qin Ran still couldn't bear to let Qin Sheng stay here. She continued, "You have suffered for so many years. I don't want you to suffer anymore. Just listen to me." Qin Sheng still insisted, "Sister, I am not that precious. If you miss me, You can come to see me at any time. Wu Yajun wanted to persuade Qin Sheng, but she thought he was right. She could only turn to her husband for help. Zhu Weiguo said slowly, Ran, listen to Sheng. If he wants to stay here to observe mourning for his mother, just stay here. This is what he should do. Filial piety is the most important of all virtues. I think no one will stop him. Qin Ran thought that her uncle would help persuade Qin Sheng, but it didn't occur to her that he would stand on Qin Sheng's side. She could only sigh and look at Qin Sheng helplessly. Zhu Weiguo then said to Qin Sheng, Shenger, I admire you for doing this. But you don't have to be so anxious. Go back and pack your things first. Then Gong Sun will ask someone to clean this place. You can move here tomorrow. What do you think? Qin Sheng nodded and said, I will listen to you. Thank you for your understanding. Zhu Weiguo patted Qin Sheng's shoulder and said, Okay, then I will go back first. I have arranged lunch at the farmhouse nearby. You should be hungry now. This matter finally came to an end. They left the cemetery and went to the farmhouse not far away by car. After Gong Sun went back, he reported this matter to Qin Chang'an. Qin Chang'an was still indifferent and didn't express any opinion. But in his heart, his evaluation of his son improved again. Later, Qin Ran also called Qin Chang'an. She hoped that Qin Chang'an could persuade Qin Sheng, because the conditions there were too harsh. Qin Chang'an smiled bitterly and said, Even you can't persuade him. Do you think that he will listen to me? Let him do what he wants. Qin Ran knew that there was no turning back. She had to go to supervise in person and clean up the best living environment for Qin Sheng so that he wouldn't have to suffer too much. Lao Gua, who guarded the mausoleum, lived at the gate of the cemetery. There were 2 bungalows there, one for himself and the other for sundries. Hearing that Gong Sun told him that the woman's son would come here to observe mourning for her for a month, Lao Gua was shocked. The living environment here was not good. It was estimated that the woman's son couldn't hold on for more than a few days. Gong Sun led some people to clean up the sundries room. It was not a difficult thing for the Qin family. They finished it in half a day. However, they followed Qin Ran's advice and didn't do anything reckless. After all, she knew Qin Sheng's character better. If they did that, Qin Sheng would obviously be angry. He came here to observe mourning for his mother, and it was natural for him to suffer. He didn't come here to enjoy himself. Therefore, after cleaning up the room, there was only a bed, a desk, a chair, a bookshelf, a wardrobe, and an air conditioner. There was nothing else. After Qin Sheng returned to Tongning, he packed a few sets of clothes. The rest of the clothes were filled with books, including the courses and professional books that he had been learning during this period of time. He wanted to make use of this period of time to cram. He also brought along his laptop to look up some information. The next day, Qin Ran sent Qin Sheng to the hospital in person. Lao Gua had been waiting at the door for a long time. Then he took Qin Sheng to his room. Lao Gua couldn't understand this playboy in front of him. Your mother has been dead for so many years. Why didn't you come to observe mourning for her before? Now you think of it. What an unfilial son. I guess he is just pretending. Qin Ran followed Qin Sheng into the room and asked with a smile, How is it? Is the environment good? Qin Sheng knew that it must have been arranged by his sister. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so good. Just look at Lao Gua's room. But it didn't exceed his bottom line. Qin Sheng smiled and said, It's much better than I thought. Thank you, sister. Qin Ran snorted and said again, Sister, if there's nothing else, you can go back. It's very cold in the mountain. You're not like me. I grew up in a mountain and can't stand the cold, Qin Sheng said with concern. Qin Ran said with distress, I want to stay with you for a while. I can't run away. I'll always be here. If you miss me, you can come and see me at any time. Besides, it's only a month, Qin Sheng said with a smile. Qin Ran stared at the willful Qin Sheng and didn't say anything. Qin Ran didn't stay here for long. She was urged to leave by Qin Sheng again and again. Qin Sheng watched her get in the car and leave. Then he turned around and walked back. Chapter 376. It couldn't be better. First update. Lao Guan has been working hard recently. I hope you can support him. Please vote more for the monthly and year-end review. Lao Guan was not tall and had dark skin. He walked with a limp and stooped body, so he could only guard the mausoleum here. There was no job for him anywhere. Besides, the salary here was not low. He could earn 5,000 yuan a month. How could an old man like him find such an easy job? Therefore, Lao Guo was dutiful and kept the whole park clean. He was afraid that the Qin family would fire him if they were not satisfied. Lao Guo was a farmer from a nearby village. The surrounding area had almost been developed. Lao Guo was supposed to be one of those who had been relocated to Beijing. Not to mention the downtown area, even in the suburbs, Lao Guo would have to pay a lot of compensation. Lao Guo, who had lost a lot of money, should be enjoying his old age with his children and grandchildren at home. Why would he guard the mausoleum here? Could it be that Lao Guo was a restless person and wanted to continue playing his role? Obviously not. There was a story behind it. Lao Guo's children were all ungrateful. They cheated him of all the money and drove him out of the house. No one was willing to take care of him. Lao Guo, who was homeless and lonely, was so pitiful. It happened that there was a job here, so the villagers recommended him to come here. Lao Guo didn't care about the job at all. As long as he could eat and live, he would do it. Not to mention guarding the mausoleum. As long as he had the ability, he would do it even if he had to dig a grave. Thus, Lao Guo persisted in this way, and it had been several years since then. When Qin Sheng came back, he got a chair and a pot of tea. He poured tea for both Lao Guo and himself and said, "Uncle Guo, have some tea." Lao Guo murmured in his heart, but he didn't dare to taunt Qin Sheng. After all, Qin Sheng was the owner of the mausoleum. What if Qin Sheng fired him? So he took the tea and said politely, "Little Qin, I'm a rough guy. Don't call me Uncle Guo. I'm not used to it. Just call me Lao Guo." After hearing his words, Qin Sheng could understand him. Honest, ordinary people had always been like this. He smiled happily and said, "All right. Anyway, I will stay here for a month. I will call you Lao Guo. You can call me Xiao Qin." Good. Lao Guo nodded and said. Then he tasted the tea and said enviously, Good tea. I've never tasted such good tea in my life." Of course, Qin Sheng knew what to do. For an ordinary person with a small nose and eyes, a little favor was more useful than giving him real money. That was because real money would make him insatiably greedy, while a little favor could last for a long time. So he said, "I brought some with me. I'll leave them for you when I leave." Ha, you can't do that. Lao Guo was happy in his heart, but he didn't say it. Qin Sheng didn't continue to talk about this topic. It was enough for them to know each other. There were many interesting things in life. Dealing with people was the most interesting thing. Today's weather was really good. The warm sun shone on the whole half of the mountain. There were unknown birds chirping in the forest and the sound of spring water in the distance. Qin Sheng was drowsy with a pot of tea and a book. Everything complemented each other. Before they knew it, it was lunchtime. Qin Ran wanted to send a chef to cook for them, but Qin Sheng refused without hesitation. Qin Ran also wanted to send someone to bring them lunch every day, but Qin Sheng refused again. He said he was not used to such a life and preferred to cook by himself. Qin Ran wanted to say something, but Qin Sheng said directly, "Sister, I'm in mourning for our mother. You don't have to worry about me. I'm a grown-up and I can take care of myself. I'll call you if I need anything." Qin Ran felt sorry for her brother and was afraid that he would suffer here. Now that Qin Sheng said so, she didn't care about him anymore. Lao Guo cooked here every day. There was rice, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, tea, pots, bowls, ladles, and bowls. Every morning, he would go to the nearby market to buy vegetables. He had gotten used to such a life over the years. It was lunchtime today. Lao Guo didn't know what Qin Sheng had planned, so he said tentatively, "Little Qin, you stay here and continue to read. I'll cook for us." Qin Sheng came to himself and quickly stood up. "Lao Guo, I'll cook from now on. You can buy vegetables, wash dishes, and do the cleaning. But I can only eat vegetables during the morning period. If you're not used to it, you can go to a nearby restaurant and have a sumptuous meal. I'll pay for it." Lao Guo was surprised and quickly said, "How can I do that?" "That's settled. Show me what ingredients we have. I guess we have to make do with it today. I'll write you a menu later, and you can go out to buy them this afternoon." Qin Sheng put down the book and followed Lao Guo to the kitchen. Lao Guo didn't expect to have such an unexpected harvest, which made him feel a little embarrassed. He didn't expect that this rich kid could cook, but he didn't know if it was delicious. 40 minutes later, Qin Sheng made 3 dishes and a soup with the available ingredients. The soup was a simple tomato and egg soup. Lao Guo's eyes were wide open. After he tasted it, he gave a thumbs up and said, "Little Qin, it's delicious. I didn't expect you to be so good at cooking. I'm so lucky." Qin Sheng smiled and said, "If it's delicious, you can have 2 more bowls of rice." After lunch, Qin Sheng tidied up the things in his room. After Lao Guo went out to buy vegetables, he walked to chat with his mother. This month, he had enough time to have a good talk with his mother. The last time he stayed in the old house was too short. It was just a hurry. This time, he could tell her everything that happened in the past 20 years so that she would know that her son didn't have a hard time in the past 20 years, so she could rest assured. In the following days, Qin Sheng and Lao Guo got along well. Lao Guo's impression of Qin Sheng was getting better and better. He couldn't find any fault with this young man, which completely changed his view of the spoiled rich kids. He had thought that this young man couldn't bear any hardships and wouldn't be able to hold on for more than a few days. He thought that this young man would leave soon. However, the way Qin Sheng behaved made him really dumbfounded. Not to mention cooking. Even washing clothes was done by Qin Sheng himself. He even washed the clothes for him conveniently. At the same time, Qin Sheng took the initiative to do the heavy physical work and never let Lao Guo do it himself. He never refused to run errands. Lao Guo felt that he didn't come here to guard the mausoleum, but to enjoy life. Qin Sheng was much better than his ungrateful son and daughter. Why didn't he have such a filial son? This was the happiest and most comfortable time he had been guarding the mausoleum for so many years. It was a pity that it was only a month. Qin Sheng's life was very regular, similar to the time when he was in Shaman. In the early morning, he got up and ran along the mountain road, which was very familiar to him. He used to run like this in Zhongnan Mountains when he was a child, so he didn't feel tired at all. He ran for an hour and then practiced boxing. When he came back, Lao Guo had already bought breakfast. After breakfast, Qin Sheng would chat with his mother with incense paper and flowers. These flowers were sent by someone sent by Qin Chang'an, who had persisted for so many years. They would be delivered punctually at 8 o'clock every morning, 7 days in a week. After spending half an hour with his mother, Qin Sheng came back to make lunch. After lunch, he read books and drank tea. In the afternoon, he would go with Lao Guo to clean the flowers and plants in the mountain with a shovel and hoe. After dinner, Qin Sheng would go back to his room to read and study. At about 9 o'clock, he washed up and went to bed. He woke up at 7 o'clock the next morning. Occasionally, Qin Sheng would walk around with Lao Guo to get familiar with the surroundings, but he didn't go far. He planned to climb the Great Wall in the next 2 days. Half a month passed unconsciously. The spring festival was getting closer and closer, and the atmosphere in the nearby villages was getting more and more intense. But Lao Guo looked a little disappointed. One afternoon, Qin Sheng and Lao Guo were sitting in the yard drinking tea and basking in the sun. Qin Sheng had nothing to do, so he asked, "Lao Guo, I've been here for half a month. Why haven't your children come see you? Or you don't have any children?" Hearing this, Lao Guo put down his teacup and lit a cigarette. He let out a long sigh and said, "How can I not have any children? I have 2 sons and a daughter, but they're all ungrateful people. Otherwise, I wouldn't have become homeless and come here to guard tombs. It's better that they don't come to see me. I'm happy here. Every time they come to see me, they just ask for money. My 2 sons are even worse. They beat me when I don't give them money. I don't know what I did in my previous life. God wants to punish me like this. If I had a son like you, my life would be worth it." The more Qin Sheng listened, the more he frowned. He couldn't help asking, "Tell me in detail. I'll see if I can help." Lao Guo sighed again. Since he had nothing to do now, he might as well tell Qin Sheng about what had happened in the past few years. More than 10 minutes later, Qin Sheng finally knew what had happened. He didn't expect that an ordinary person like Lao Guo would have such a complicated and tragic story. Lao Guo's 2 sons and a daughter were really bad people. Your father raised you all by himself and waited for you to grow old and die. but he didn't expect you to be so cruel. Lao Gua, I'll figure out a way for you later. You can't let them get away with it. Qin Sheng squinted and said. He had many ways to deal with such people. Lao Gua said carelessly, Don't bother. I'm used to it. As long as they don't bother me, I'll be fine. They had been together for half a month, so they were familiar with each other. Then Lao Gua asked, Little Qin, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask it or not. If it's not convenient for you, just pretend I didn't ask. Ask away. I can tell you anything. Qin Sheng said carelessly. Lao Gua said slowly, I've been here for many years, and I know most of the relatives and friends of the Qin and Zhu families. But it's the first time I've met you and learned that your mother has a son. Why didn't you come here all these years? Qin Sheng smiled bitterly and said, Since you've told me your story, I'll tell you mine. Therefore, Qin Sheng briefly told Lao Gua the strange story that had happened to him, but it was not as complicated as it seemed. Lao Gua was stunned. He didn't expect Qin Sheng's story to be even more magical than his. A few minutes later, Lao Gua finished the story. He shook his head and sighed. I see. No wonder I haven't seen you before. I didn't know we were all poor people. But you're better off than me. At least you can enjoy the rest of your life. Qin Sheng smiled faintly and did not say anything else. Just like that, the day passed peacefully. The next day, a stranger came. Qin Sheng didn't expect to meet one of the main characters in Lao Gua's story. Chapter 377. Tell me the truth. Asking for votes? Asking for votes. During this time, Qin Sheng and Lao Gua got along very well. Lao Gua was not very capable, but he was honest and reliable. On the day of the Laba festival, he cooked a pot of Laba porridge with ingredients bought from the village. It reminded Qin Sheng of the first time he celebrated the Spring Festival with the Lin family in Xin. Qin Sheng would leave in a week. Lao Gua was reluctant to let him go. Except for the old woman who had died many years ago, no one had been so nice to him. Lao Gua appreciated Qin Sheng from the bottom of his heart, so he treated Qin Sheng like his own son. Unfortunately, he couldn't be his real son. These days, Lao Gua didn't allow Qin Sheng to do anything except cooking. He only asked Qin Sheng to accompany his mother or study, unless Qin Sheng insisted on doing something and Lao Gua couldn't change his mind, which made Qin Sheng feel a little embarrassed. Qin Sheng also knew that Lao Gua was a kind of person. If you treated him a little bit better, he would be more than happy to repay you wholeheartedly. Qin Sheng couldn't understand why his children treated Lao Gua like that. Did dogs eat their consciences? Time flew by so fast. Half a month had passed unknowingly. During this period, Qin Sheng was very relaxed. He directly turned off his cell phone in case he was disturbed by others, such as Han Su, who often called him. He almost blocked him. During this time, his sister Qin came 3 times. Every time, she came with clothes and food, for fear that Qin Sheng would starve. Qin Shang'an came once, accompanied by Gongsun. They chatted for a while, and then went to see Qin Sheng's mother. When they came, Lao Gua often praised Qin Sheng in front of them, which made Qin Sheng feel a little ashamed. It was a sunny afternoon. Qin Sheng drank tea and read a book, while Lao Gua slept with his eyes closed. People who didn't know them might think they were father and son. At this time, a sloppily dressed middle-aged man rushed into the yard on an electric scooter. He shouted from afar, "Oh, old master, you are living a carefree life. I heard that you have become rich recently. You even go to restaurants every few days." These harsh and mean words made Qin Sheng raise his head subconsciously and look into the distance. He did not know who it was. He just put down the book in his hand and stood up. Lao Gua heard the familiar voice and woke up immediately. He asked in a trembling voice, "What are you doing here?" The man stopped his electric scooter by the side. With a cigarette in his hand, he walked over carelessly and said, "What do you think I'm here for? You've become rich recently. You should share some with me. The new year is coming. Your son doesn't have enough money to celebrate the new year. Get out of here. I don't have any money for you." Lao Gua stood up angrily, pointing at the man's nose and cursing. Qin Sheng finally understood that the rascal in front of him was Lao Gua's son. He didn't expect that they would come to him before he went to find them. Qin Sheng was not in a hurry to speak. He just squinted his eyes and looked at the idiot in front of him. The man laughed and said, "No money? Do you think you can get rid of me by saying that you have no money? No way. You gave all the money to boss and my sister and only left me a little. Now, you should compensate me properly. I told you I don't have any money. If you don't leave, I'll call the police." Lao Gua had no way to deal with such a rascal. The man said disapprovingly, "Go to the police. I'll see what they can do to me. Even an upright official can't solve a family dispute. If you don't give me money today, believe it or not, I'll demolish your place and sell it for a little money." Lao Gua threw the cup in his hand at him directly and said, "Get out of here. I don't have a son like you. You're a sinner. F***CKU. How dare you hit me? Believe it or not, I'll destroy you." The man changed his face and shouted at Lao Gua angrily. How dare he call himself Lao in front of his father? Qin Sheng's face darkened. Not to mention the fact that this idiot had bullied Lao Gua. He was furious that he had disturbed his mother's peace. The man really didn't know how high the sky was and how deep the earth was. Therefore, Qin Sheng directly blocked the man's way and sneered. "Do you know where you are?" The man didn't know who Qin Sheng was. He thought Qin Sheng was the same as the old man, a guard of the mausoleum and a dog of a rich family. He scolded him directly. "It's none of your business. Get out of here. Don't get involved if you don't want to die. Since you don't know, I'll talk to you about something else. As a son, I dare not ask you to take care of the old man when he is old, but at least have some conscience. Your father raised you and your sister alone, and you know better than anyone else how hard it was. Look at what you've done. It's an insult to animals to say you're like animals." Qin Sheng scolded him word by word, not giving any face to the idiot in front of him. Being scolded to the face by Qin Sheng, the man was so angry that he said, "What the F***CK? Are you courting death?" After saying that, he threw a punch at Qin Sheng. Unfortunately, Qin Sheng was not an ordinary person. During this period, Qin Sheng's physical condition had recovered to 80%. It was easy for him to deal with a small character like him. Qin Sheng grabbed the man's arm and continued to say, "Thirdly, you don't even know who I am, but you dare to scold me and beat me. It's a miracle that a fool like you can live until now." Before the man could figure out what was going on, Qin Sheng had already made his move as fast as lightning. He grabbed the man's neck and pulled him down abruptly. Following that, he lifted his knee and hit the man's face directly. The man was completely stunned in an instant. However, this was just the beginning. Qin Sheng didn't intend to let him go so easily. Ignoring the man's bloody face and holding his head and moaning, he kicked him to the ground. Then he grabbed a chair and directly smashed it on the man. After venting his anger, Qin Sheng scolded, "My mother is buried here, and you dare to disturb her. Are you F***king looking for death?" The man curled up on the ground and didn't dare to fight back. Then he realized that he had met a tough guy. He cursed Qin Sheng fiercely in his heart, but he also knew that a wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. This was his territory. As long as he got out of here, he could easily find dozens of people to kill Qin Sheng. Then he would not be so arrogant. Lao Gua, who was standing next to him, was already scared. He didn't expect Qin Sheng to be so fierce. At first, he was worried about Qin Sheng, but now he began to worry about his unfilial son. No matter what, this was his son. He was afraid that Qin Sheng would continue to beat him. If he accidentally killed him, it would be a big problem. "Little Qin, he is not sensible. For my sake, please let him go." Lao Gua grabbed Qin Sheng's arm and begged for mercy. Qin Sheng sighed and said, "Lao Gua, you are too kind. In this society, kind people are always bullied." While Qin Sheng and Lao Gua were talking, the man immediately jumped up and ran away on his motorcycle. After he was far away, he dared to say to Qin Sheng, "You F***king wait for me. I'll call someone over to kill you." "Okay, I'll wait. If you don't come, you'll be my grandson." Qin Sheng sneered. A clown was a clown after all. It was hard for him to rise to the top. That was all he could do, so he was just cannon fodder. After the man ran away on his motorcycle, Lao Gua began to worry about Qin Sheng again. He hurriedly said, "Little Qin, you'd better run. That guy will definitely come back." He knows a lot of gangsters here. I'm afraid you'll be in danger. Qinsheng didn't take it seriously and said, Lao Gua, it's okay. The sky won't fall. I'll deal with it today. You have to be ruthless to some people. You can't reason with them, but I have to reason with them. Lao Gua still wanted to say something, but Qinsheng had already stood up and walked to his room. He was going back to get his phone. He could deal with this kind of thing. Even if there were 8 or 10 gangsters, they couldn't do anything to him. But not today. On one hand, he couldn't disturb his mother's peace. On the other hand, he had to deal with this trifle for Lao Gua. Therefore, he had to call Uncle Gong's son and ask him to send someone over. An hour later, Qinsheng took a chair and sat on the roadside outside the cemetery, quietly waiting for Lao Gua's second son to come to take revenge. But there were several cars parked not far from him, and the people in them were all well-known gangsters in this area. Qin Chang'an didn't need to ask him to do such a trivial thing. Gongsun just made a phone call to arrange it. Sure enough, this guy finally came. 3 vans rushed over, looking travel-worn. Qinsheng appreciated this point. At least he did not shoot his mouth off. Qinsheng stood up and was ready to welcome his friends. Before the van came to a complete stop, more than 10 men rushed out of the van and directly surrounded Qinsheng. Each of them looked ferocious, as if Qinsheng had dug up their ancestral graves. As the victim, Lao Gua's second son accompanied a young man who looked like a big brother and got out of the van unhurriedly. Big brother, this is the guy who beat me. You must help me get back my face today. Lao Gua's second son pointed at Qinsheng and said with a wronged face, like a young wife who had been wronged. This young man, who looked like a big brother, was wearing a thin down jacket. His chest was exposed even in the middle of winter, as if he was afraid that no one would be able to see his valiant tattoos. Not to mention his colorful hair, he looked like he was a gangster, and he spoke for gangsters. Bro, where are you from? The big brother asked arrogantly. Qinsheng smiled and said, I'm a good man, not a gangster. Oh, hearing this, the big brother didn't have to be afraid anymore. He said directly, Then tell me, what should you do with my brother? Do you want an arm or a leg? Can I pay for it? Qinsheng deliberately joked. The big brother's eyes lit up, and he said happily, Good, you're quite smart. Then it depends on your sincerity. You really believe it? Qinsheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The big brother was irritated and said angrily, How dare you trick me? Do you want to die? Many gangsters moved closer to Qinsheng. As long as the big brother said a word, they could eat Qinsheng alive in an instant. Qinsheng sneered and said, Are you sure you want to fight with me? The big brother didn't understand what Qinsheng meant and said angrily, Are you kidding me? Qinsheng raised his arms to the top of his head and clapped unhurriedly for a few times. This was the signal that they had agreed on. After Qinsheng's action, all the cars parked on the roadside drove over, blocking the whole road in an instant and encircling all of them. At first, these gangsters and their big brother didn't understand what the man in front of them was going to do. When they did, they immediately became nervous. They were ambushed. However, this was not the end. The main point was that when they saw the group of people getting out of the car, they instantly felt like dying. Was this a King movie? Chapter 378. Making an exception for you. I woke up this morning to see that we've all made it to the top 10. You guys are so awesome. I'll keep writing these days. I hope I can work hard enough this year to be worthy of myself and all of you. I'll try my best to finish this round and give you an explanation. P.S. Recently, some people say that the plot is a bit dull because it's a buffer period. After this period, the plot will get better and better. But Lao Guan's style has always been like this. I hope you can understand. In this society, strength and background are important. For some small figures, you can't talk about law and morality with them. You have to let them know that you are a big shot that they can't afford to offend. For example, if you know a big shot that they don't dare to offend, then they will stay away from you and treat you like a big shot. Therefore, Qinsheng was not in the mood to talk with his fists and feet. He directly showed his trump card and ended the Gordian knot. At this moment, the group of gangsters and the big brother had changed from arrogance to uneasiness. They were not idiots, of course. They knew what was going on. This guy in front of them was definitely not a big shot that they could afford to offend. Otherwise, how could he get so many big shots in the whole Huiro area to help him? The big brother looked at Lao Gua's son and asked, "Do you know who this young man is?" Lao Gua's son, of course, didn't know these real big brothers, but he also realized that the situation was not good. After all, his big brother was so nervous that he almost peed his pants. Moreover, it was easy to tell who was more powerful from the momentum of the two sides. Look at how everyone was dressed. And look at these gangsters. They looked like garbage collectors. "I don't know. I thought he was the mausoleum guard here," Lao Gua's son said, trembling. The big brother slapped Lao Gua's son in the face and scolded, "F***CKU. You set me up." Qin Sheng didn't care about their internal conflict. He just stood there, waiting for the next development of the situation with a smile. Next, he would help Lao Gua get justice. "Xiao Sanzi, you're so powerful." So many people. Several middle-aged men walked over slowly. They had already recognized the big brother who was swaggering in front of Qin Sheng. These middle-aged men were also shocked. They were drinking and chatting when they suddenly received a call from the big brother, saying that someone in Huiro did not know the rules and bullied a big shot son. If they didn't want to be involved, they should see if it was their man. Hearing this, the gang of big brothers immediately rushed over. For that big brother to personally make a phone call, it meant that this big shot was not simple. He might even be a powerful figure. After all, Sijio City was a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. When they saw the son of this big shot, they didn't expect him to not put on any airs at all. He called them brothers and gave them cigarettes. This made them even more embarrassed. They were all praying that he wasn't one of their people. Otherwise, how could they face the world? After Qin Sheng told them what to do, these big brothers did as they were told. They parked their cars not far away and waited for the call. No one dared to call in advance, or it would be more troublesome. After waiting for more than half an hour, they finally saw the culprit who had tormented them today. They thought that it was a famous person, but they didn't expect that it was a small fry who couldn't even be seen in public. These big brothers were cursing in their hearts. Was it worth it for them to make a move? However, it was a call from the top. No matter how reluctant they were, they had to do it, unless they wanted to die. Some of these big brothers were happy, while some were sad. They were happy that it was not one of their men. They were sad that the big brother was his man. The big brother called Xiao Sanzi saw this middle-aged man and said with a sad face, "Brother Long, why are you here?" Brother Long didn't hesitate. He directly kicked the big brother to the ground and said, "Don't you know why I'm here? Not bad. You're more powerful than me. I think you want to die, don't you?" Xiao Sanzi quickly got up, knelt in front of Brother Long and shouted, "Big brother, I'm sorry. I didn't know he was your friend. I was just used. Big brother, I'm sorry. It's useless to say this to me. I'll teach you a lesson when we get back." Brother Long slapped Xiao Sanzi's face again and scolded him. What bad luck. Only then did Xiao Sanzi understand. He knelt down in front of Qin Sheng and cried out, "Grandpa, my dear grandpa, Xiao Sanzi failed to recognize Mount Tai and offended you. Please forgive me and forgive me. Xiao Sanzi is willing to do anything for you." Qin Sheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The big brother, who was so arrogant just now, became a pitiful man in the blink of an eye. Xiao Sanzi was already like this. Lao Gua's son, who was next to him, was already paralyzed on the ground. These people were really ruthless. If they said they wouldn't let them live until tomorrow morning, they definitely wouldn't let them see the sun. Qin Sheng couldn't help regretting that he didn't know this guy's background and offended him. Brother Long also apologized. "Brother, it's all my fault. I didn't teach my men well and caused you trouble. Don't worry, I'll give you a satisfactory explanation later." Qin Sheng smiled and said, "You're welcome. It's just a small misunderstanding." "Then what do you think we should do?" Brother Long asked for Qin Sheng's opinion. He said he would kill Xiao Sanzi and bury him alive without hesitation. Qin Sheng had already thought of a solution. At least he had to respect these big brothers. After all, he still needed their help. He looked at Xiao Sanzi and said, "I'll leave him to you. You can do whatever you want." Then he pointed at Lao Gua's son and said, "But leave him to me. I have something to settle with him. Lao Guo's son almost fainted when Qin Sheng pointed at him. He wanted to run away subconsciously, but was caught by Brother Long's two subordinates. They punched him in the chest without hesitation and almost knocked him out. Brother Long, I may need your help. Qin Sheng continued. Now that the matter was over, the next step was to solve Lao Guo's problem. Brother Long said respectfully, You're welcome. Just tell me what to do. Qin Sheng smiled and said, I'll lend you some brothers and find me a reliable man. I have something to deal with. Brother Long agreed immediately. It's nothing. I'll arrange it right away. At this time, Qin Sheng looked at Brother Long and the other big brothers and said politely, I'm sorry for troubling you today. I hope you can forgive me. You're all influential people in Huairou District. I don't come here often, but I have a small request. I hope you can take care of me in the future. The big brothers hurriedly said, Brother, you're welcome. We're all family. Just tell me what you need. They knew clearly that the young man in front of them was definitely not simple. Not to mention his temperament. His behavior today was not something that a child from an ordinary family could do. He was very experienced. Facing them, he was neither servile nor overbearing and showed enough respect. He was not simple at all. Qin Sheng looked back at the cemetery behind him and said, It's not a big deal. My mother is sleeping here, and I don't want anyone to disturb her peace. I hope you can be careful. Hearing this, they couldn't help feeling a little scared. If something really happened here, they might not face this young man, but the big shot behind him. After the big brothers agreed, Qin Sheng politely saw them off. Xiao San and his men were also taken away. But Brother Long left a trusted subordinate and several brothers for Qin Sheng. Of course, Lao Guo's son was also here. When everyone was gone, Qin Sheng came back and squatted in front of Lao Guo's second son. I heard from Lao Guo that, what's your name again? Guxiong. Bear as in black bear. Master, whatever you want. Even a panda will do. Guxiong didn't dare to talk nonsense at this time. Qin Sheng didn't have time to talk nonsense with him. He continued, I know what happened to Lao Guo. You three are really bad. I'm a little free, so I want to reason with you. Now you lead the way. I'll ask them to invite your brother and sister here for a chat. Guxiong was a little embarrassed. After all, it was a family scandal. Qin Sheng's face changed, and he stared at him. Guxiong immediately agreed. Okay. I'll lead the way. Qin Sheng stood up and smiled at Brother Long's men. Brothers, sorry to bother you. I'll wait for you in the restaurant box at the intersection. Let's meet later. If they don't want to come, you'll have to be more careful. Brother Long's men, of course, understood what he meant. They smiled and led Guoxiong to the car and left. Only then did Qin Sheng walk back leisurely. Looking back, he felt that he was really bored to death. There was no connection between them at all. But on second thought, there were many things in the world that needed idle people like him. Otherwise, those people wouldn't know the rules. When Qin Sheng returned to the yard, Lao Guo, who was restless, ran to him and asked, Little Qin, are you okay? Qin Sheng smiled and said, Lao Guo, don't worry. What can happen to me? They're all nobodies with small noses and small eyes. They can only scare ordinary people, but those who are slightly more powerful will be exposed. Lao Guo was relieved. That's good. I'm afraid that bastard will do something to you. If so, I'm sorry. Qin Sheng couldn't do anything about Lao Guo's temper. He was too honest. He said, Lao Guo, let's go out. What for? I'm going to the mountain. Lao Guo was puzzled. Qin Sheng said meaningfully, Go and meet your 3 filial children. I think from now on, they won't dare to treat you like this anymore. Qin Sheng's eyes lit up. Lao Guo's face changed slightly. He wanted to say something, but didn't. He followed Qin Sheng out. In the restaurant box at the intersection, Qin Sheng chatted with Lao Guo over tea and a plate of peanuts to kill time. It was a pity that they couldn't drink. It was a good choice to drink some erguo too in this weather. About an hour and a half later, Brother Long's men finally led Lao Guo's 3 children into the box. Guoxiong, who knew how powerful Qin Sheng was, dared not to breathe loudly. The other 2 didn't know the seriousness of the situation. They were a little scared at first, but they became proud when they saw Lao Guo. You old bastard, why did you drag us here? Are we here to send you off? Lao Guo's daughter cursed viciously. It was rare to see someone scolding his own father like that. Qin Sheng saw that Lao Guo's eyes turned red when he was scolded. An honest man who had lived for most of his life was so aggrieved at this moment. It made Qin Sheng sigh with emotion. Qin Sheng squinted and walked to the woman slowly. He said calmly, "I don't usually hit women, but I'm going to make an exception for you today. You're so disgusting." Before the sharp-tongued woman could understand what was going on, Qin Sheng had already slapped her pale face, which was smeared with cheap makeup. The woman had never been humiliated like this before. She fell to the ground directly. Lao Guo's eldest son, who was standing next to her, felt lucky that he didn't say anything. Otherwise, he would be the one getting slapped. P.S. I just did a stupid thing. I sent the manuscript as a chapter, and then I had to replace it with a new chapter. But the number of words was a bit short, so I had to use symbols to replace it. I hope you can understand. It seems that I'm not used to having a manuscript. I guess you're not used to my hard work either. Chapter 379. Reluctant to leave, keep up the good work, and ask for more votes. Filial piety was the most important of all virtues. Qin Sheng always believed that if a person didn't even have the most basic filial piety, he was definitely not worth being friends with. If he treated his parents like this, what else could he do to you? As a child, you can let down anyone, but you can't let down your parents who raised you. Even if your parents did something wrong, at least they wouldn't have any bad intentions towards you. It's just that sometimes their good intentions might lead to bad things. Qin Sheng wanted to help Lao Guo because he had never been with his parents since he was a child and always envied the warmth of other people's families, or because he had been reflecting on his relationship with Qin Chang'an recently. After Lao Guo's daughter was knocked to the ground, she had wanted to fight with Qin Sheng like a shrew. But when she saw Qin Sheng grabbing the plates on the table, she was so scared that she didn't dare to say anything. Lao Guo felt sorry for Qin Sheng. After all, Qin Sheng was his daughter. He wanted to persuade Qin Sheng, but Qin Sheng had told him not to stop him from doing anything today. But he would not go too far. Lao Guo had to give up. Thinking of how the three beasts had treated him all these years, he didn't feel sorry for them at all. It could be considered as compensation. Qin Sheng signaled Brother Long's men to help Lao Guo's daughter up, put down the plate, sat on the chair, and snorted at them. "Do you know why I called you here?" Lao Guo's children didn't dare to say anything. Qin Sheng continued, "I guess you know what you've done to Lao Guo all these years. So I want to reason with you. You can't bully an honest man, let alone your parents. It's a sin, you know. God is watching you. Aren't you afraid of retribution? Aren't you afraid that your children will do the same to you?" Lao Guo's children all lowered their heads and didn't dare to answer Qin Sheng. But Qin Sheng knew they didn't regret it, so he had to work harder. Qin Sheng suddenly said, "Kneel down." Lao Guo's children heard this and looked at each other. They wanted to refute, but were afraid of being beaten, so they just stood there and didn't know what to do. Qin Sheng glared at Guo Xiong, who had already suffered a loss. Guo Xiong was scared out of his wits. He knelt on the ground with a plop and shouted, "Master, I was wrong. I will do whatever you say. I will listen." The other two were still unmoved. They even despised Guo Xiong a little. Qin Sheng sneered and said, "You won't shed a tear until you see the coffin." After that, Qin Sheng winked at Brother Long's subordinates. Of course, those men knew what to do. They immediately grabbed the other two children and made them kneel down after punching and kicking them. "Do you think that I brought you here to talk about life's principles? My principles are my fists. If you don't admit your mistakes, fine, I'll beat you until you do," Qin Sheng said in a powerful and resonant voice. After he finished speaking, the rest of the people immediately became timid. They no longer had the slightest bit of arrogance. After all, everyone was afraid of being beaten. Qin Sheng continued, "Originally, it had nothing to do with me. But Lao Guo had guarded my mother's tomb for so many years. How could such an honest man be bullied? So I was a little angry and came here to reason with you. What are you in my eyes? You are ants that I can crush at any time. Moreover, you have wives and children. It's too easy for me to deal with you. If you don't believe me, you can ask Guo Xiong how he got all those scars." The other two children were just wondering how Guo Xiong got hurt. They thought that he had been beaten because he gambled and owed money again. Now they completely understood. Guoxiong took the lead and said, Master, master, my dear master, I was wrong. Don't worry, I will be filial to my father in the future. I won't let him suffer anymore. It's useless to say that to me, Qin Sheng said impatiently. Guoxiong immediately knelt and crawled forward to Lao Guo. He said, Dad, I've been wrong all these years. Please forgive me. I will be filial to you in the future and take good care of you. Among the three siblings, Guoxiong was the most arrogant. After all, he had been in the underworld and knew a lot of people from all walks of life. His brother and sister were often harassed. Today, Guoxiong had admitted his mistake. They had been afraid for a long time. However, they didn't know how to say it out of respect. Qin Sheng continued, If Lao Guo hadn't stopped me today, I would have found someone to destroy you. But you are his children, so I want to give you a chance. As long as you are still living in Beijing, I have many ways to deal with you. If you don't want your families to be affected, you should be sensible. If you want to call the police, I think I'm more familiar with the Public Security Bureau than you. Qin Sheng's words completely broke the last line of defense of the other two. Everyone wanted to live a peaceful life and didn't want to live in fear all day. The woman, who had been mean just now, sobbed and crawled to Lao Guo. She hugged Lao Guo's leg and cried, Dad, please forgive us. We didn't know any better and made you suffer so much. We won't do it again. I'll take you home today and let you live a happy life. Lao Guo said with a smile, Dad, please forgive us. Lao Guo's eldest son saw that his younger brother and sister had surrendered. He was afraid that the man in front of him would vent his anger on him. So he hurriedly crawled over and hugged Lao Guo's leg, crying. Qin Sheng didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. He didn't know whether it was the right thing to do, but it was worth it as long as Lao Guo could live a better life. As for whether they were willing or not, Qin Sheng couldn't help it. But Qin Sheng definitely had a layer of protection. So he said, If you think that as long as you live through today, you will be fine, I think you are wrong. From today on, I will ask someone to keep an eye on you. If you do anything unfilial, don't worry. I will teach you a lot of principles of life. Master, we don't dare. We absolutely don't dare. Guoxiong was more sincere than anyone else, because he knew how powerful this man was. Qin Sheng couldn't stand there crying and crying. So he shouted directly, Stop acting. Get up. Let me tell you what you should do. Hearing that, they stopped crying and stood up in a hurry, afraid that they would be beaten again. From today on, you will give Lao Guo 3,000 yuan as alimony every month. Is not a lot for you, right? Also, you must show your filial piety to Lao Guo on holidays and birthdays. If Lao Guo is willing to continue to guard the mausoleum, we will talk about it. If not, you three families will take turns to take care of him. How to take turns is up to you. Qin Sheng told them the plan and asked, Any objections? Hearing that, although they were very unwilling, they had no choice but to agree. No. Lao Guo thought that Qin Sheng was going to drive him away, so he stood up tremblingly and said, Little Qin, I am not too old to walk. I want to continue to guard the mausoleum for your family. If I really can't, can I go? Qin Sheng was touched. Lao Guo, I don't mean to drive you away. I just want to let you choose. If you want to continue to stay there, you can stay. That's good. Lao Guo was relieved. He had been used to the mausoleum, and now he would be uncomfortable wherever he went. That was the way of old people. After comforting Lao Guo, Qin Sheng looked at Lao Guo's children again and said, You heard it. At least for now, you don't have to take turns to take care of him. But you have to do what you should do, or you will bear the consequences. We will. Don't worry. The three children said one after another. Qin Sheng thought that he had done what he should do, and the next thing was to see the result. He said, Okay, you can go now. Hearing that, the three children let out a long sigh of relief and couldn't wait to leave. Before leaving, they had to say good things to Qin Sheng and Lao Guo, which was funny. When Guoxiong was about to leave, he was stopped by Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng sneered and said, Guoxiong, I heard that you like gambling. I will tell the brothers in Huairo that from now on, whoever sees you at the gambling table will break a leg first, and then an arm the second time. If you want to take the risk, you can have a try. Master, I dare not. I really dare not. Guo Xiong was so scared that his legs went soft. Qin Sheng scolded him, "Get out." Guo Xiong hurried out, not daring to look at the road, and almost hit the wall. After the three children left, Qin Sheng's business was finished, so Brother Long's brothers could go back. Qin Sheng walked to them and said, "Brothers, you have worked hard." "Not at all, not at all. This is what we should do." The leading man responded politely. After all, the man in front of him had an unfathomable background, and even his brother had to be respectful to him. Qin Sheng took out the 2,000 yuan he had prepared and handed it to him. "This is a gift for you. Let's have a good meal. Don't refuse, or I will be unhappy." Hearing that, the man had to take it, but he admired Qin Sheng's way of dealing with people. He had learned a lot today. After thanking Qin Sheng again and again, he left with his men. Everyone was there except Qin Sheng and Lao Guo. Qin Sheng took a deep breath and said, "It's finally over. Lao Guo, it's almost time for dinner. Let's eat here today." At this time, Lao Guo suddenly knelt on the ground and said with tears, "Little Qin, thank you. Thank you." He was about to kowtow to Qin Sheng, which startled Qin Sheng. He hurried to help Lao Guo and said, "Lao Guo, what are you doing? This will shorten my lifespan. I should thank you. You've guarded my mother's tomb for so many years. It's my duty to do this for you." Lao Guo ignored Qin Sheng and continued to thank him. Qin Sheng sighed with emotion. It was just a little effort for him, but it made an old man who was dozens of years older than him feel this way. How could he not be grateful? Of course, he didn't know how much it affected Lao Guo today, because the old man got his revenge today. How could he not be grateful? It was over. Qin Sheng and Lao Guo went back to their regular life, and the Spring Festival was approaching. Lao Guo also bought some things for the Spring Festival. Meanwhile, he tidied up the yard and the room to make it look like the Spring Festival. On the 28th of the 12th lunar month, Qin Sheng chatted with his mother for a long time. When he came back, Lao Guo had already prepared lunch. Qin Sheng smiled and praised Lao Guo for his cooking skills, but Lao Guo lowered his head and didn't say anything. Because 1 month was finally up and Qin Sheng was leaving today. This month was the happiest time he had in years, so he didn't want Qin Sheng to leave. But he knew that Qin Sheng had to leave because he was a man of great ambition. Just after noon, Qin Ran drove to pick up Qin Sheng. She couldn't wait to leave. This month was really like a year, so she rushed over as soon as she finished her work. "Have you packed everything?" In the yard, Qin Ran saw Qin Sheng, who had rough skin. She felt sorry for him and held his hand. Qin Sheng looked at the suitcase and backpack in his hand and smiled. "Nothing, everything is packed." "Then let's go." Qin Ran picked up Qin Sheng's luggage and said directly. Today was the 28th of the 12th lunar month, and the day after tomorrow was New Year's Eve, so they had a busy schedule. They would go to Xi'an the next day, Beijing on New Year's Eve, and Shanghai on the third day of Chinese New Year. Everything had been arranged. When they put the luggage in the trunk, Qin Ran remembered and asked, "Where is Uncle Guo?" "In his room," Qin Sheng said casually. Qin Ran was a little dissatisfied. "Why doesn't he come out to see you off?" Qin Sheng didn't say anything. He knew why Lao wouldn't come out. Of course, he didn't want him to leave, which made him sad. He shouted, "Lao Guo, I'm leaving. Won't you see me off?" Lao Guo didn't come out, not even a sound. "Lao Guo, don't miss me. I'll come to see you often. Take care of yourself when I'm away." Qin Sheng continued to shout. Lao Guo still didn't come out. Qin Sheng sighed. He wouldn't go in to say goodbye to Lao Guo because it would make him feel worse. At this moment, Qin Ran understood what was going on. She didn't expect that her brother and Lao Guo would be so close after a month. "Sister, let's go." Qin Sheng sighed. They looked at each other and got in the car slowly. Qin Ran started the car and honked several times. They waited for a few seconds, but Lao Guo still didn't come out. Finally, they had to leave. Chapter 380. Chapter 379, I have a plan. Guess how long I can hold on. Ha ha ha. I won't let you down. I hope you can continue to support me. In this world, most people were ordinary people. They might not have a legendary life, and they might not have glorious deeds that they could brag about to their children. However, every ordinary person was unique. They all had different feelings of joy, anger, sorrow, joy, separation, and reunion. In everyone's eyes, Laogua was just a grain of sand in the vast sea of people, unimportant. Laogua had never thought that anyone in this world would care about him, including his 3 ungrateful children. But Qin Sheng, a young man who had nothing to do with him, gave him the love and warmth he needed most. That was why Laogua was touched and reluctant to part with him. He knew that Qin Sheng would come again in the future, but he couldn't live like this anymore. Because of Laogua's reluctance, Qin Sheng was a bit sad on the way back. Laogua was not a big shot, but an ordinary person. Qin Sheng never looked down on him. He treated him as a friend, not to mention that he was guarding his mother's tomb. It's almost the new year. Cheer up. Don't be sad. Qin Ran touched Qin Sheng's head and laughed. She didn't expect her brother to have such a deep friendship with Laogua that they were reluctant to part ways. Qin Sheng took a deep breath, forced a smile, and asked, "Sister, when are we going to Xi'an tomorrow?" Speaking of this important event, Qin Ran said seriously, "We will leave at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning and arrive in Xi'an before 11 o'clock. My father will go with us to visit Grandpa's grave. After that, he'll go back to Beijing. He has something to do in the afternoon and evening. I'll stay with you in Xi'an for a day. I know you have a lot of things to do. I also want to thank the Lin family in person for taking care of you all these years." With such a considerate sister, Qin Sheng felt that his life would be better and better. He was moved and said, "Sister, you're so nice. Fortunately, I haven't been with you for more than 20 years. Otherwise, I don't know how much you spoil me. Are you praising me or insulting me?" Qin Ran didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Qin Sheng laughed and said, "Of course I'm praising you. I don't know who is lucky enough to marry a wife like you. I'll miss you. You've only just returned, and you're already chasing me away? Don't worry, if you don't get married, I won't get married," Qin Ran said casually, but it was her real thought. She had to see that everything was on the right track for Qin Sheng before she could leave the Qin family. She would never let those outsiders bully Qin Sheng. After entering the downtown area, Qin Sheng felt that the atmosphere of the Spring Festival was getting stronger and stronger. The streets were decorated with lanterns and streamers. Both sides of the road and the lampposts were hung with big red lanterns and china knots. Compared to usual days, there were fewer cars on the road, and it wasn't as congested as usual. This was because most people had already left the city and returned to their hometowns. Many of them only returned once a year. For many people, life was like leaving home. There were many opportunities in the big city, but there was more loneliness in the big city. It was unknown how many people were quietly working hard in this city, only hoping to lift the skirt of the goddess of luck in an instant and finally stand out in this city. People came and went in this city. Some people could not bear the torture of reality and finally left, while others rejoined with hope. Actually, many of them would live a better and more comfortable life if they left this city and returned to their hometowns. However, for the sake of the passion and ideals in their hearts, they continued to struggle and struggle. For them, from the moment they left their hometowns, there were only 2 choices in life: to die in a foreign land or to return home in glory. Qin Sheng did not make any comments on this. Everyone had their own choices, and everyone had to be responsible for their own choices. As for whether this life was worth it or not, perhaps one could only wait until one afternoon when he was old, holding his grandson in his arms, drinking tea, looking at those old photos, recalling the past, and sighing with emotion. Only then could he finally put the coffin on the coffin. When Qin Sheng and Qin Ran returned to the Sihiyuan, the entire Sihiyuan had been cleaned and decorated with lanterns and streamers. It was very lively. Gongsun had bought several carts of goods for the Spring Festival, but things like couplets and the word fu could not be put up until the day after tomorrow. Qin Sheng went back to his room to take a shower and change his clothes. He had not taken a proper shower for a month and had been living there casually. No wonder Qin Ran said that he was smelly. After the shower, Qin Ran was already waiting for him in the living room before he thought about what he would do in the afternoon. She said that she would take him to get a haircut and that he had to have a new hairstyle for the Spring Festival. After that, She would take him to buy new clothes for the Spring Festival and some goods for the Spring Festival. Qin Sheng muttered, I'm already an adult. Why should I wear new clothes for the Spring Festival? I'm not a kid who hasn't grown up yet. Besides, I haven't worn many of the clothes I bought some time ago. Qin Ran said angrily, not to mention that you are not married yet. Even if you are married, you will always be a child who can't grow up in front of me. Besides, it's been more than 20 years. It's the first time for you to celebrate the Spring Festival with me after you've grown up. How can you not tidy up well? These words made Qin Sheng unable to refute. Although he did not like shopping, he could not spoil his sister's mood, so he could only go out with her. Gong Sun, who was next to him, was already grinning from ear to ear. The Spring Festival this year was more lively and more festive. The reason why Qin Ran did this was not only that this year was the first time that Qin Sheng celebrated the Spring Festival with him after he came back, which had a different meaning. The most important reason was that this year's Spring Festival would have a deeper meaning for Qin Sheng. At that time, the Sihiyuan would welcome many guests. His father would formally introduce Qin Sheng to everyone and then announce that his son was back. At that time, his father would also take Qin Sheng to visit his relatives and friends. These relatives and friends were not simple people. This was equivalent to telling everyone that Qin Sheng would officially inherit all his things. How could Qin Ran not take this seriously? In this way, Qin Ran took Qin Sheng to shop for half a day. When they returned to the Sihiyuan, it was already 7 o'clock in the evening. Big and small bags almost filled the entire trunk and back seat. Gong Sun called several servants to carry the bags back and forth twice. In the living room, Qin Chang'an knew that this pair of siblings went out to buy goods for the Spring Festival, so he had been waiting for them to have dinner. Originally, there was a high-level party tonight, which was also the last gathering of their small circle before the Spring Festival. However, Qin Chang'an thought that Qin Sheng had observed mourning for his mother for a month. On the first day when he returned to the Sihiyuan, he had to accompany the two children to have dinner. Other things were not important, so he rejected it. If he went there after dinner, they would not say anything. Dad, didn't Uncle Gong Sun say that you have a social engagement tonight? Before Qin Ran and Qin Sheng left, they had asked Uncle Gong Sun about the schedule of the old man. At that time, Uncle Gong Sun had said so. She still had some resentment in her heart. This old man really did not take Qin Sheng seriously. No wonder Qin Sheng could not be close to him. However, she could understand that the old man had to maintain some things in his position. After all, he was just a businessman. So when she saw the old man, Qin Ran was a little surprised. Qin Chang'an stood up and said with a smile, It's not a big deal, so I rejected it. Qin Sheng just came back today. As an old man, I have to have a good dinner with you. After Qin Ran walked over, she directly held her father's arm and said, Dad, when did you become so considerate? Why didn't I know that after so many years? It seems that I have benefited from my brother. Child, how can you talk like this? Qin Chang'an said with a smile, but in his heart, he was bursting with joy. Although Qin Sheng came back and his relationship with Qin Sheng did not make much progress, he had gained something else. That was his daughter was more and more important to him, not as cold as she used to be. Facing his father, Qin Chang'an, Qin Sheng still could not call him dad. For many people, it was too easy. Wasn't just a word. But for Qin Sheng, he had never called him this word for so many years. Secondly, he had not really untied the knot in his heart. You are back. Qin Chang'an saw Qin Sheng's embarrassment, but he took the initiative to greet him. Qin Sheng smiled awkwardly and did not know where to put his eyes and hands. Qin Chang'an walked over, patted Qin Sheng on the shoulder, and said, Nice clothes. Your sister must have picked them for you. Don't stand here. You must be hungry. Let's go to dinner first. The family of three moved to the dining room. Gong Sun hurried to ask the servants to serve the dishes. Finally, he sat at the last seat at the table. The atmosphere of the dinner was not bad. Qin Ran, who was smart enough to change the atmosphere, deliberately led the topic, such as some interesting things between Qin Sheng and Lao Guo in the cemetery, and deliberately said that Lao Guo was reluctant to see Qin Sheng off today, and so on. When the dinner was about to end, Qin Chang'an took the initiative to say, I have something to do later. If you and your sister go out to play, don't play too late. Come back early. We have to go to Xi'an tomorrow morning. Then he looked at Qin Sheng and said, By the way, Qin Sheng, I asked your uncle Gongsun to prepare some things for the Lin family. You can see if they are suitable or if you need to add anything. But I may not have time to see them this time. I will ask your sister to say hello and thank them for me. I will go to them next time. Well, okay, I got it. Qin Chang'an's words made Qin Sheng feel a little warm. He could see Qin Chang'an's sincerity to the Lin family. But Qin Sheng still did not know how to say it. He hesitated for a moment and said again, There is one thing. Before Qin Sheng could say it, Qin Chang'an waved his hand and said, You don't have to say it. Don't worry about it. I have a plan in mind. I have already sent people to do it. Qin Chang'an's words shocked him. He had thought that Qin Chang'an was too busy to care about this thing. He was still thinking about how to say it to Qin Chang'an. He did not expect that Qin Chang'an had already taken it into consideration. Qin Sheng was speechless for a moment. He did not know how to respond, let alone say thank you. Qin Chang'an continued, This thing has nothing to do with you. The Lin family raised you for the Qin family. This is a great kindness. I have to pay it back in person. Otherwise, your mother and the dead old man will not let me go. Qin Sheng was more moved and did not know what to do. Sitting next to him, Qin Ran just lowered her head and smiled. Of course, she knew what Qin Sheng had been thinking about. How could Qin Sheng, who valued friendship and righteousness, forget about Father Lin? Qin Chang'an did not want Qin Sheng to be restless, so he stood up and said, I'm done. I'll leave first. You two take your time. After Qin Chang'an left, Qin Ran patted Qin Sheng's shoulder and said, Qin Sheng, although he has done something wrong, he is definitely a qualified father. It's just that sometimes he doesn't know how to express his fatherly love. You will understand in the future. Okay. This time, Qin Sheng nodded sincerely. In the evening, Qin Sheng and Qin Ran did not go out. Qin Sheng accompanied his sister in the living room to watch TV and chat for a while. Then he went back to his room to read. He had been wondering whether he should call Annie Wang and Xin in advance to tell them that he would go back to Xi'an tomorrow. In the end, he gave up the idea and gave them a surprise. At that time, he could also meet Hao Lei, who must have gone back to Xi'an. Since he had developed a good work and rest habit during the morning period, it did not take long for him to go to bed directly. This sleep was very comfortable. Chapter 381. Ashes to Ashes, Dust to Dust. Tomorrow was New Year's Eve. There was a lot of traffic going to the airport. Although today was the official holiday, many companies had already taken a few days off in advance to avoid the last flood of people during the Spring Festival. There were only a few days of official holidays. In addition to visiting relatives and spending time with their families, they also had to meet many friends and classmates. After all, most people could only see each other once a year, and their relationships were maintained by the Spring Festival every year. A humane company could always gain more loyalty from employees. Although it was an era where money and interests were paramount and job hopping was the most direct way to get promoted and get a raise, people were after all human beings, not machines. They had 7 emotions and 6 desires, so they had to weigh the pros and cons and make choices. When Qin Sheng was studying in Shanghai, he would go home with Su Qin every year. It was a special feeling to hug each other in the bedroom, full of different smells and people, listening to the accents and stories from all over the world. Su Qin should have returned to Xi'an. However, Qin Sheng did not have time to see her. Even if he had time, he did not want to disturb Su Qin. After all, he had promised Uncle Su. After graduating from high school, Qin Sheng only returned to Xi'an a few times every year. Except for the time when he came back from traveling, this time should be the most special. Every year, when the new year was approaching, Qin Sheng's classmates and friends who were studying or working in Xi'an would share a song in their WeChat moments to welcome their classmates and friends who were in other places. After listening to the song, those classmates and friends who were in other places would feel more and more eager to return home. This song was called Back to Xi'an, and the singer was Ma Fei, a famous local singer in Xi'an. Qin Sheng suddenly thought of this song, so he told the driver in the front, Xiao Lu, turn on the Bluetooth. I want to listen to this song. There were 2 cars in the Qin family. Qin Chang'an and Gong Sun sat in the front car, and Qin Sheng and Qin Ran sat in the back car. After hearing Qin Sheng's words, Qin Ran said with jealousy, Xi'an is indeed your home. Are you in a good mood to listen to a song? I suddenly thought of this song and a lot of things and friends in the past, Qin Sheng said thoughtfully. Qin Ran joked, I'm kidding. Let me hear what song you want to listen to and see what your taste is. So Qin Sheng connected the Bluetooth and found Ma Fei's song back to Xi'an in NetEase cloud music. Soon, a familiar melody sounded in the car. Qin Sheng looked at the heavy traffic outside the window. For these people, this song was not only about going back to Xi'an, but also about going back to Chengdu, Zhengzhou, Guiyang, and so on. I'll take a picture and post it on Weibo. At noon, I ate mixed bean paste noodles again. There was no oil in the noodles, so it was a little salty. In your dream, Mi Jiao Pao, open a branch. You should get up and run to the Volvo subway station. Sigh, the high-rise buildings in the city were connected together, but in Wall, there wasn't a small room that she could afford. You don't have anyone with you, and you don't know when you're going to make the down payment on a Volvo Beijing. Hey, my buddies, the tendons are all ready. Hey, my buddies, are you still in the subway? Hey, my buddies, when are you coming back to Xi'an? Buddies are waiting for you to meet them in Xi'an. After listening to the song, the smile on Qin Sheng's face grew wider. Hearing this familiar Xi'an dialect, it was so kind. The lyrics were simple and straightforward, but the melody was beautiful. With the singing style of the dialect, it had a special flavor. Especially at the end, the conversation between the 2 brothers on the phone was very touching. Every year during the Spring Festival, many people would burst into tears after hearing this song. Eventually, they would leave the big city and return to their homeland. It seems that your feelings for Xi'an are really deep, Qin Ran said with a smile. She didn't feel much about this song. After all, she lived in a different environment, but she could understand Qin Sheng's feelings. Qin Sheng didn't refute, but replied with a smile. After all, it's the place where I lived for more than 20 years. The meaning is different. They arrived at the Capital International Airport before 8 o'clock. As expected, the airport was full of people. But Qin Sheng took Qin Chang'an's private plane and went through the business boarding building, so it didn't affect much. The plane was still the most advanced Gulfstream G650, and the pilot was still China Airlines. Even the flight attendants were the 2 beauties Qin Sheng had met last time. After greeting them with a smile, Qin Sheng casually found a seat and sat down. Qin Ran sat opposite to him. The 2 beauties had a better understanding of the Qin family. They knew that the dignified middle-aged man was the owner of this Gulfstream G650, and the extraordinary beauty was the middle-aged man's daughter. However, they didn't know who the young man they met for the second time was. But from their conversation, it seemed that he was the beauty's younger brother, which meant he was the middle-aged man's son. Then why hadn't they seen him before? They didn't want to delve into these things. They just didn't know if this young and handsome man had a girlfriend. If he took a liking to them, they would become phoenixes and live a rich and powerful life without worrying about food and clothing. Therefore, when they served Qin Sheng, they were extra considerate and polite. Even their smiles were brighter. Qin Sheng definitely didn't know what the 2 beauties were thinking. He chatted with Qin Ran for a while, then closed his eyes and started to catch up on sleep. Qin Ran took out a book and casually killed time. The work before the new year had already ended, so she didn't need to work overtime now. As for Qin Chang'an, who was sitting in the back, he was reading some investment plans. At 10:30, the plane landed at Xi'an Xianyang International Airport. When walking out the door of the airport, Qin Sheng took a deep breath of the familiar air. Although the haze was a bit heavy, even if he was breathing in the haze of his hometown, the smell was the purest. Of course, this was just a joke. Gong Sun had already arranged everything. Xi'an had prepared 2 Mercedes-Benz to pick them up. After the Qin family got in the car, they went straight to Zhongnan Mountains. After getting in the car, Qin Sheng was more excited. He hadn't been back for half a year. He chattered and introduced some local customs and landmarks to Qin Ran. After driving for 40 minutes on the round-the-city highway and half an hour on the Guangzhou Ring Road, they finally arrived at the foot of Zhongnan Mountains, where the old master was buried. Zhongnan Mountains, the most blessed land in the world. Qin Sheng was very familiar with this place. He had been to every valley, and there were many old friends in the mountain, such as Chang Baji's master. But he didn't know if they were still there. Qin Sheng didn't have time to visit them. He could only find time to visit them next time when he came back. Qin Ran had been to Xin several times, but it was her first time to come to Zhongnan Mountains. She had read a lot about Zhongnan Mountains in books, so she began to ask Qin Sheng, a typical local tyrant. Qin Sheng was happy to introduce them. 2 cars stopped by the road. Qin Sheng and Qin Ran got out of the car. Gong Sun took out the things from the trunk and stood next to Qin Chang'an. Qin Chang'an looked at Qin Sheng and said in a low voice, "You are more familiar with this place than anyone else. You lead the way." Qin Sheng nodded and led the others to the inconspicuous grave of the old master. In fact, there was no one there except Qin Chang'an, Qin Ran, and Gong Sun. The others were waiting by the road. The way to the grave was not easy. The winding path was all dirt road. There were many weeds and trees on the side of the road. If they were not careful, their clothes might be torn. A few minutes later, Qin Sheng finally led them to the grave. He pointed at the small mound that was not a grave if one didn't look carefully. This is it. Qin Chang'an and Gong Sun had been here before, so they were not strange to this place. They were not surprised. Qin Ran was very shocked. She had heard a lot of old men talk about her grandfather's past in Beijing. She had always thought that her grandfather was a mysterious and legendary figure. At least her grandfather's grave was magnificent. How could it be so shabby? This was the real wilderness. It seemed that he had been buried in a random place. This is it, Qin Ran said in surprise. Qin Sheng knew that his sister didn't believe it, but it was the truth. He smiled bitterly and said, "This is it." Qin Chang'an took the things from Gong Sun and walked slowly to the grave of the old master. He squatted down with difficulty. He was not in good health recently. Seeing that Qin Chang'an had started to worship, Qin Ran and Qin Sheng stopped talking. They took a few steps forward and squatted down on both sides of Qin Chang'an. The 3 of them had a clear division of labor. They were familiar with the procedures of opening the wine, placing flowers and fruits, burning joss paper money, and lighting the incense. It was Qin Chang'an who would light the incense. As the son of the old master, he naturally represented the Qin family, unless the elder brother who had become a monk in Mount Wutai came back. However, the task of sprinkling the wine was given to Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng took the cheapest bottle of Shifeng 375 and sprinkled it on the grave of the old master. At this moment, he had a lot to say, so he murmured while sprinkling the wine, "Grandpa, I'm back to see you again. This time, I'm not alone. There are other people in the Qin family, including your son, your granddaughter, and my sister. I guess you've recognized them all. I guess you have a lot to say to me, but you left too early. Grandpa, I also have a lot to ask you, but I know you won't tell me even if I ask, so I won't ask. I think I'm your grandson. Everything you do must be for my good, but I don't understand it now. Now that I've returned to the Qin family, you don't have to worry about me anymore. As for what happened in the past, let it be ashes to ashes. Since you chose to sleep here, I guess you don't want to be disturbed, so I won't tell anyone except for the people of the Qin family. Well, I've poured you a bottle of wine. If you think it's not enough, remember to tell me in my dream. I'll bring you another bottle next time I come to see you." After all, she had no feelings for the old master. The number of times they met could be counted on one hand. She didn't know whether the old master valued boys more than girls. She was just a little curious. Such a legendary figure chose to be buried here. Not everyone could have such a state of mind. As for Qin Chang'an, he still had the same temper. There was nothing to talk about between the father and the son. They had said what they wanted to say last time. Moreover, the old master knew everything about his life. After all the blessings of the Qin family gathered on him and Qin Sheng. However, there was one thing he wanted to say. That was, "Old master, Qin Sheng's path in the past 20 years was chosen by you. I have no complaints. Then, from today onwards, Let me continue to lead him on his path. Chapter 382. Old House, Old Friend. Chapter 381. Old House, Old Friend. Continue to ask for votes. Continue to ask for votes. Everyone, please do your best. More than 20 years ago, the old master took Qin Sheng to the Zhongnan Mountains, the most blessed place in the world, alone. He even buried himself in the wilderness of this foreign land and became a lonely ghost, in order to accumulate a lifetime of good fortune for Qin Sheng in 20 years. From then on, Qin Sheng began a life of wandering from place to place for more than 20 years. During these 20 years, Qin Sheng lost a lot of things. Today, more than 20 years later, Qin Chang'an took Qin Sheng to the Zhongnan Mountains again. They ended the ceremony by paying respects to the old master and officially announced the beginning of Qin Sheng's unpredictable second half of life. The first 20 years of suffering created the glory of the second half of Qin Sheng's life. Whether it was worth it or not, no one knew. They offered incense, kowtowed, and bowed. The ceremony of paying respects to the old master ended in this simple way, without too complicated procedures. After Qin Chang'an stood up, he looked at Qin Sheng and Qin Ran and said, "You stay in Xi'an for another day. I'll go back to Beijing first. I'll ask Gongsun to pick you up at the airport tomorrow at noon." Qin Ran nodded silently and said, "Dad, take care of yourself. Drink less during the meal. Remember to take the medicine I bought for you. It's good for your health." "Got it." Qin Chang'an smiled with relief. Qin Sheng nodded slightly to Qin Chang'an and watched Qin Chang'an and Gongsun leave slowly. He planned to stay for a while longer to clean up the withered grass on his grandfather's grave. After Qin Chang'an and Gongsun left, only Qin Sheng and Qin Ran were left here. Qin Ran cleaned up the weeds and dust on her clothes. Qin Sheng took off his coat and put on the tree beside him. Then he squatted on the ground and started to work. This kind of physical work was not strange to him. When he was young, he often went to the nearby villages to help out, so that the villagers could help him when he needed help. The most famous thing here was the grapes. So Qin Sheng liked the harvest time the most. He could go to the garden to pick grapes and eat until he was full. Staring at the lonely grave, Qin Ran still had some ideas and asked subconsciously, "Qin Sheng, what do you think of grandfather's life?" His sister's words made Qin Sheng fall into deep thought. How should he evaluate his grandfather's life? He did not know who could comment on his grandfather, but he remembered what the old Taoist priest of Lu Guantai had said when he saw his grandfather off. Hence, Qin Sheng said slowly, Taoist priest Run of Lu Guantai once said that some people never live for themselves in their whole life. To this world, they're just a group of passers-by in a hurry. They do not want to leave any traces, and they do not want to be remembered by anyone, because they live only for others. The Taoists say that this is the state of anatta, selfless. Qin Ran pondered over his words. It seemed that it was just as he had said. Qin Sheng busied himself for half an hour and finally cleaned up his grandfather's grave. But when he just arrived, he saw that someone must have told him that there were still some incense sticks on the grave. He didn't know if it was Annie Wong, Xin, or someone else. "Grandpa, we're leaving. We'll see you again next time." After saying goodbye to the old master, Qin Sheng left with Qin Ran. The car was still waiting for them by the roadside. It was the staff of the Xian branch of the Qin family. After getting in the car, Qin Sheng planned to take Qin Ran to have a meal first. He wanted to taste the delicacies of Xian. To be exact, he was greedy. At this time, eating a bowl of mutton stew was the most comfortable thing. "Qin Sheng, where did you live with Grandpa when you were young? Or did you all live in the Lin's house?" Qin Ran asked casually. She wanted to know more about Qin Sheng's childhood. Qin Sheng said with interest, "In the beginning, Grandpa and I lived nearby. Later, after I went to school, I lived in the Lin's house on weekdays. On weekends or holidays, I came back to live with Grandpa. Since Grandpa took me to Xian, he has never left this place for 20 years. Qin Ran was a little shocked. It seemed that she would have gone crazy if she had to stay in one place for 20 years. Qin Sheng laughed and said, "Sister, let's go." I'll show you the place where I lived when I was young. It's also our home. Therefore, Qin Sheng let her sit in the passenger seat. He drove. Qin ran to a village not far away. Qin Ran was somewhat looking forward to it, but she was completely mentally prepared. A few minutes later, they finally arrived at the nearest village. The old house where Qin Sheng and the old master lived was a courtyard in the village. It was a few hundred meters away from the settlement of the village. The old master liked quiet and did not like to be disturbed, so he chose such a place. The courtyard faced north, with the Zhongnan Mountain at the back and Chang and city at the front. There was no wall in the courtyard, but a fence made of tree stumps encircled the 3 old brick and tile houses in the middle. There was a towering tree in the courtyard, which was the most common Chinese pagoda tree in Xi'an. This Chinese pagoda tree was more than 100 years old, and now it needed 2 or 3 people to hug it. This Chinese pagoda tree had left a deep impression on Qin Sheng. It was still luxuriant, but it looked a little bleak because it was winter. He remembered that in summer, the old master would sit under the tree to enjoy the cool in the evening, listening to a piece of Peking opera and playing eru, while Qin Sheng would stand nearby and play. That feeling was really comfortable. After so many years, after the old master passed away, Qin Sheng had never returned to this place. The yard had long been dilapidated, with weeds growing everywhere. There were also many shabby things. Presumably, it had become the first choice for the children in the village to play hide-and-seek. This is the place where you lived with Grandpa when you were young. Qin Ran was a little shocked. She had thought that the place where Qin Sheng and Grandpa lived might not be good, but she did not expect that the conditions would be so harsh. She had never been to such a place in her life, let alone live in such a place. Qin Sheng laughed and said, "Yes, this is my childhood." Qin Ran hugged Qin Sheng again and said, "Brother, how much hardship did you suffer when you were young? I really feel sorry for you." Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Sister, you're here again. That's all in the past. I'm fine now. What's more, this place is very good. You haven't been to more remote places. It was good enough for me to have a place to live when I was young. Those places are the real hardships. Well, I will make up for the hardships you suffered before," Qin Ran said firmly, which made Qin Sheng feel a little embarrassed. This sister really loved him so much. "Let's go. I will show you around." Qin Sheng took Qin Ran's hand and walked in. The car was parked at the door, and the driver was waiting for them in the car. Although the walls of the courtyard were made of tree stumps and fences, the 2 doors of the courtyard were made of pine wood and locked with a lock. Qin Sheng's key was left in the bedroom of the Lin family. It seemed that he had no idea what to do with it. But this was not a problem for Qin Sheng. He randomly picked up a brick from the ground and smashed the lock with it in front of Qin Ran's shocked eyes. "Let's go." Qin Sheng shrugged at his sister, as if he had done a big thing. He was a little proud. After walking into the courtyard, Qin Sheng used a wooden stick to open a path in front of them. Qin Ran followed closely behind him. Qin Sheng, who was in a good mood, pointed here and there to introduce the old house to Qin Ran. However, the things left in the old house were not valuable. Many of his grandfather's things were left in the hands of the old Taoist priest in Leguantai, such as the valuable eru and guqin. After walking for a while, Qin Sheng felt bored and was ready to leave with Qin Ran. At this time, a car passed by the courtyard. Seeing Qin Ran and Qin Sheng inside, the young man who was driving the car rolled down the window and shouted at them, "What are you doing?" After that, the young man stopped the car and ran over angrily. He was a little surprised to see the Benz parked at the door. He did not know where this rich man came from and came here to have fun. "What are you doing here?" the young man, who looked very formidable, asked. For the villagers, although this courtyard had been abandoned long ago, they had deep feelings for the old man and the children who lived in the courtyard, especially the old man, who had helped the village to do a few big things. Therefore, the villagers were very grateful to the old man and had been spontaneously guarding this courtyard. Although the old man had passed away, his grandson was still alive. It was just that he had not come back for so many years. Qin Ran was a little worried. She did not know what the young man in front of her wanted to do. Qin Sheng did not care at all. He said with a smile, "Who's he? It's only been a few years. Don't you recognize me?" The young man, who was called Huzi by Qin Sheng, was stunned. Then he took a few steps forward and recognized the man in front of him. He did not expect that it would be Qin Sheng. Huzi's expression turned into surprise in an instant. Then he rushed to Qin Sheng, hugged his shoulder, and said, "What the F asterisk CK? Qin Sheng, it's you. What the F asterisk CK? It's so F asterisk king unexpected. Why did you come back?" Huzi was full of vulgarities, which made Qin Ran a little uncomfortable. However, she could hear the surprise and affection in his words. Qin Sheng punched Huzi and said, "This is my home. Why the F asterisk CK? Can I come back?" Huzi was even more excited as he said, "F asterisk CK, you still know this is your home. How many years has it been since Grandpa Qin passed away? Where the F asterisk CK have you been? We all thought you F asterisk king died." Qin Sheng often fought with them when he was a child. He was used to this way of talking. After all, they were all born and raised in the village. Although their words were mostly vulgar, they expressed the most sincere feelings. Qin Sheng replied, "F asterisk CK, I won't die even if you die." Hearing this, Huzi laughed out loud. Then he noticed the extremely beautiful woman beside him. He was so nervous that he stuttered, This beauty, who is she? Your girlfriend?" Qin Sheng punched Huzi again and said, "F asterisk CK off. This is my biological sister." Huzi scratched his head a little embarrassedly and said, "Hello, sister, hello. I'm sorry, I'm a rude person. Please don't take it to heart. Hello." Since this was Qin Sheng's friend, Qin Ran didn't reject him and responded politely. At this time, Huzi said, "Let's go. Don't stand here. Let's go to my home and have a good talk. I guess everyone doesn't know that you're back. You don't know how much they miss you." Qin Sheng looked at Qin Ran and said somewhat embarrassedly, "Huzi, another day. We still have something to deal with today." "Another day? Go, go, go. Who knows when we can see each other again after you leave? It's the spring festival. Even if you have something to do, you don't have to wait for a while. It's the spring festival. Everyone is back. It's rare that everyone is here." Huzi didn't give up and insisted. Qin Ran smiled faintly and said, "Qin Sheng, I'd better meet my old friends. I don't know when we can see each other again." Qin Sheng was lost in thought. It seemed that, as his sister said, he really didn't know when he could come back again. He also wanted to know how these childhood playmates were doing now. Consequently, Qin Sheng and Qin Ran followed Huzi to a village not far away. Huzi drove in the front, and the driver followed behind them in a Mercedes-Benz. Along the way, Huzi kept talking on the phone. If Qin Ran heard the way he talked, she would definitely laugh out loud. Qin Sheng had been used to this kind of environment since he was a child. Chapter 383. Chapter 382, Can't Forget Our Roots. Please continue to ask for votes. Please support me. When Qin Sheng was in college in Shanghai, he would go back to Zhongnan Mountains to visit his grandfather every time he came back from winter and summer vacations. He would stay with his grandfather for 2 days before going to the Lin family. At that time, he would go wherever his grandfather was. Although Zhongnan Mountains was not Qin Sheng's hometown, Qin Sheng still had a lot of feelings for this place. Moreover, his friends in Qin were only his childhood friends in this small village, except for his best friends in junior high school. This village was neither too big nor too small, with only about 100 households. However, this village, which was backed by Mount Zhongnan and close to Qin, was not poor. Every household had a beautiful 2-story building, and some even had extravagant villas. Not to mention that many people in the village were doing business or serving as officials in Qin City. Many people had become rich by opening a farmhouse at the foot of the mountain. After all, every summer, Mount Zhongnan would be overcrowded. In the remaining years, they had become rich by relying on grapes and special agriculture. Therefore, as the spring festival was approaching, cars of different grades were parked in front of every household in the village, and the doorways were decorated very beautifully. With Huzi's enthusiastic promotion, the news of Qin Sheng's return spread like wildfire. Everyone was curious about what Qin Sheng had become after disappearing for so many years. Was he glorious or down? After all, Qin Sheng was a famous person in the village and could be said to be the king of children. Therefore, before they arrived at Huzi's house, many villagers and childhood friends had gathered at the door. After Huzi parked the car, a villager asked, "Huzi, didn't you say that Qin Sheng is back? Where is he? Don't lie to us." Huzi pointed to the Mercedes-Benz behind them and shouted confidently, "Third uncle, why are you in such a hurry? Your two daughters are married, and you still want Qin Sheng to be your live-in son-in-law. It has been so many years. You little brat, you've grown up. You even dare to laugh at me." The simple and honest man called Third Uncle laughed out loud, revealing his yellow teeth. However, he was not angry. This was how it was in the village. People always liked to make fun of each other. When they had nothing to do, they liked to gather together and gossip about each other. Another young man of the same age asked, "Huzi, ignore your third uncle. Tell us about Qin Sheng. I haven't seen him for many years. I was beaten by him when I was a kid." At this time, the chauffeur of the Qin family drove the Mercedes-Benz to the door of Huzi's house. Huzi pointed at the Mercedes-Benz and said, "This is it. Take a look. Qin Sheng is doing well now. He has bought a Mercedes-Benz and hired a full-time chauffeur." After hearing Huzi's words, everyone subconsciously looked at the Mercedes-Benz behind them. The expressions on everyone's faces were different. Some were surprised, some were confused, some were envious, and some were jealous. However, everyone surrounded Qin Sheng without hesitation. They all wanted to see what Qin Sheng looked like now. Seeing so many people, Qin Ran could not help but say, "Tut tut, so many people. Qin Sheng, I didn't expect you to be so popular in the village." It did not occur to Qin Sheng that so many people would come. He said proudly, "What do you think? When I was a child, I was the most handsome man in our village. People often asked my grandfather to arrange a marriage for me when I was a child." Qin Ran covered her mouth and giggled. Of course, she would not believe his words. She knew that he was joking. "Oh, how did I know that my brother is good at bragging?" But now she liked chatting with Qin Sheng. It seemed to be a normal way of getting along with a brother and a sister. After the car stopped, Qin Sheng and Qin Ran got out of the car slowly. Both of them had seen the world, especially Qin Ran. She had been to all kinds of places and occasions. Of course, she would not be frightened by the scene in front of her. As soon as Qin Sheng got out of the car, some villagers recognized him. They turned around and shouted excitedly, "It's Qin Sheng! It's Qin Sheng! It's really Qin Sheng!" Others also recognized Qin Sheng. After all, Qin Sheng had only left for 4 or 5 years. His appearance would not change much. Everyone rushed to say hello to Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng, who just got out of the car, was overwhelmed. He felt like he was a star. Qin Sheng was very familiar with these villagers. He could recognize each and every one of them, which made him feel quite close to them, as if he had found his childhood memories. Consequently, he hurriedly greeted everyone and said, "Third uncle, fourth aunt, sixth brother, Uncle Li, Uncle Wong, your legs have recovered." For a moment, the scene at the gate was extremely lively. It seemed that someone was getting married. Every villager's face was full of warm smiles. At this time, Qin Ran had also gotten out of the car. Many villagers instantly shifted their attention to Qin Ran. They had never seen such a beautiful woman with such temperament. They were immediately stunned by Qin Ran. They looked at Qin Ran with different expressions. Many people were whispering to each other. Some people directly shouted, "Qin Sheng, you brought your girlfriend back. You are so promising. Your girlfriend is so beautiful." Being regarded as Qin Sheng's girlfriend again, Qin Ran lowered her head and smiled bitterly. Huzi hurriedly explained for Qin Sheng, "Don't talk nonsense. This beauty is not Qin Sheng's girlfriend. She is his sister." Then everyone understood, but most of them did not believe Huzi's words. After all, everyone knew that Qin Sheng did not have a sister. It was probably a cover. "All right, all of you make way. Don't crowd around. It's very cold outside. Let Qin Sheng and the guests into the house first. Let's talk inside." Huzi's father and mother were also in the crowd. They shouted to the crowd, It seemed that Qin Sheng coming to their house was their relatives and distinguished guest, which made them extremely proud. Then they came to their senses and welcomed Qin Sheng, and Qin ran into Huzi's house. The whole house was crowded with villagers in an instant. Many villagers were on their way. Therefore, Qin Sheng and Qin Ran, who wanted to go back to the city, could not leave. Endless villagers and childhood friends rushed over. Everyone excitedly greeted Qin Sheng and then began to talk about the old days. Some people praised Qin Sheng for being promising. People who came from a key university were really different. Some people asked where Qin Sheng had been these years and why there was no news about him. It seemed that he had disappeared. Some people asked where Qin Sheng was now and what kind of business he was doing. Some people asked if Qin Sheng had a girlfriend and if he was married. Of course, some people said sarcastically. After all, there were all kinds of people in the village, especially those who were not convinced by Qin Sheng at the beginning and now thought they were more promising than Qin Sheng. Anyway, there were all kinds of topics. Everyone had different starting points. Qin Sheng had lived in such an environment since he was a child, so he naturally knew how to deal with these people. Qin Ran was more popular than Qin Sheng. After all, beautiful women were treated like this everywhere. She chatted with the villagers tirelessly and asked about the interesting things of Qin Sheng's childhood. This was the fastest way for her to know about Qin Sheng's childhood. Since the beauty was interested in these things, the villagers also talked to her tirelessly. If they could make this beauty smile, they could wake up from their dreams with a smile. In this way, Qin Sheng and Qin Ran stayed in Huzi's house for 3 hours. When they felt it was almost time, they stood up and said goodbye to the villagers, ready to leave. After all, they would go back to Beijing tomorrow morning and had more important things to do. They hadn't seen Qin Sheng for many years, so they had endless things to say and questions to ask. Qin Sheng was leaving as soon as he came back. Of course, they were reluctant to let him go. Some people said, "The spring festival is coming soon. You haven't spent the spring festival in the village for many years. Why don't you leave after the spring festival?" Some childhood friends said, "Qin Sheng, it's rare for you to come back. All the brothers in the village are also back. We will hold a welcome dinner for you in the evening." The villagers were kind, and Qin Sheng understood that. But he really had to leave. He couldn't leave too little time for Annie Wang and Xin. So he could only explain to them patiently, and Qin Ran echoed by his side. Qin Sheng could also feel that some people's attitudes had changed. It seemed that they didn't take the villagers seriously now that he had become successful. Qin Sheng didn't bother to explain so much. Seeing that Qin Sheng was determined to leave, Huzi's parents could only settle for the next best thing. They said that even if he wanted to leave, he should have dinner first. To be honest, Qin Sheng really wanted to stay and have a good chat with them. But this time he didn't have much time, so he had to politely refuse the kindness of Huzi's parents again. Seeing this, the villagers didn't continue to persuade them to stay. They stood up and saw Qin Sheng, and Qin ran out of the door, more or less disappointed. At the door, Qin Sheng pulled Huzi and said, "Huzi, I really have something to do this time. I hope you can understand. It's not that I'm arrogant or look down on others. If nothing goes wrong, I will stay in Xin for some time next year. At that time, I will have a good chat with you. It's okay. They can understand. For those who don't understand, don't lower yourself to their level." Huzi was very considerate and said. Qin Sheng patted Huzi's shoulder with great relief and said, "Huzi, I've left my phone number for you. So remember that I came from a village and grew up eating the food of hundreds of families. No matter where I go, no matter what I do, and no matter how great my achievements are, I will never forget my roots. So if anything big happens in the village, remember to inform me." "Ha ha ha, don't worry. Leave it to me." Huzi agreed with the spirit of brotherhood. Qin Sheng told Huzi a few more times and then turned around to greet the villagers. "Uncle, aunt, uncle, aunt, uncle, aunt, uncle, aunt. Qin Sheng is sorry this time. I hope you can forgive me. I will come back to see you next year." Most of the villagers waved goodbye to Qin Sheng politely, but some sneered at him. Qin Sheng didn't pay much attention to them, but Qin Ran did. Qin Sheng and Qin Ran finally got in the car. He rolled down the window and continued to wave goodbye to the villagers. It was not until the driver drove the car to the road that he stopped looking at them. He didn't plan to go back to the village, but when he came back by chance, he sighed with emotion. Those childhood friends had changed now. Some were rich, some were arrogant, some were down and out, and some were bitter. Everyone had their own life, but it was no longer the same as before. They were so carefree when they went up the mountain to catch rabbits, went down the river to catch fish, played in the mud in the field, and played hide-and-seek in the forest. Now the burden of life was on them, which had worn away their innocence. What replaced it was Philistine, secular, and numb. However, this was a stage that everyone would go through, including Qin Sheng. He was no longer the little boy in the past. Qin Sheng had feelings for this place, for these villagers and his childhood friends, so he felt that his life had settled down now. If he went back to Xi'an in the future, he could go back to the village. He came from here. He couldn't let these villagers poke at his grandfather's back and say, "Look at that grandson of yours. He's really an ingrate." Now that he's capable and successful, he's even forgotten his roots. Of course, the dead old master wouldn't care about these secular views, but Qin Sheng had to care. After all, his grandfather was buried here. What if someone dug up his grandfather's grave one day? Ha, of course, this was a joke. Seeing Qin Sheng in a daze, Qin Ran held his hand and comforted him. "Don't think so much. You can make everyone satisfied." She thought that Qin Sheng was uncomfortable because of the harsh words of some villagers. Qin Sheng came to his senses and smiled. "Nothing, sister. They're like that. I got used to it when I was young." "That's good." Qin Ran was relieved. Chapter 384. Seeking Death, a New Day, a New Beginning. Don't be as annoying as Old Guan. Tickets are Old Guan's motivation. Qin Sheng was very familiar with the road from Zhongnan Mountains to Tsujiang New District, but his mood was different every time. Especially recently, he felt a little guilty, because he owed the Lin family too much. Not to mention that he grew up in the Lin family. He always disappeared for no reason these years, which made Annie Wong and the others worry a lot. They were really afraid that something bad would happen to him, and he would never be heard from again. Sometimes Qin Sheng felt that he was very selfish. Sometimes he only cared about his own feelings and never thought about others, which was why he always reflected on himself recently. For example, Annie Wong. After the Lin family fell, Uncle Lin staggered into prison. How much pressure did Annie Wong bear? Xin was studying in Shanghai, and he disappeared. Only Annie Wong lived alone in Xi'an. For a woman, how hard was such a life? Uncle Lin was gone, and he was the only man in the Lin family. At this time, he should bear this heavy burden and responsibility. During the 2 years when he was away, even if he traveled according to his grandfather's last wish, he should at least keep in touch with the Lin family. In this way, when Uncle Lin had an accident, he could come back in time, instead of leaving Annie Wong and Xin helpless, being bullied by those outsiders. After the accident on Mount Jihua, he disappeared without saying a word to Annie Wong and Xin. Some time ago, he had an accident, but he did not say a word to Annie Wong and Xin. Every time he disappeared for no reason and reappeared for no reason. What would Annie Wong and Xin think? The Lin family had long regarded him as a family member, providing hin with food, clothing, education, and so on. Annie Wong treated him as her own son and took care of him since he was a child, for fear that he would be dissatisfied. Xin treated him as her own brother and treated him better than anyone else. She even said everything to him, and he was also her biggest support. But what he did would make Annie Wong and the others sad. They would think that he had never regarded them as family and was just a lodger. Therefore, after experiencing a lot of things, Qin cherished this family even more. He had made up his mind that no matter what happened in the future, he would never treat Annie Wong and Xin like this. At the same time, he must find a way to clear Uncle Lin's name and let the Lin family return to the past. Along the way, Qin had been thinking about these things. How could he make up for what he had neglected all these years? His face was solemn and his brows were furrowed, which made Qin Ran who was beside him, feel a little depressed. Qin Sheng, what's wrong? Qin Ran asked worriedly. Qin Sheng said guiltily, Sister, I feel sorry for the Lin family. They have done so much for me over the years, but I haven't repaid them. She said, Don't think so much. You're still young. You'll have plenty of opportunities to repay them in the future. Besides, you still have us. It's not enough that you can't repay them. We'll repay them for you. One day, you'll be able to repay them. Qin Sheng did not say anything more. He just thought about how to repay the Lin family in the future and how to make it up to them. When he arrived at the entrance of Jindi Furong Shurjia, it was already past 5 o'clock. The sky was getting dark. The night view of Xujiang New District at night was intoxicating and had become a beautiful scenery line of this city. Qin Sheng asked the driver to stop the car by the roadside and told him that he could go back. He would inform him in advance when to go to the airport tomorrow. Tomorrow was New Year's Eve. Qin Sheng was not sure whether Annie Wang and Xin would be at home. After all, everyone would go out to buy things for the Spring Festival these days. However, he only remembered Annie Wang's phone number. He did not remember the number that Xin had changed after going to Shanghai, so he could only call Annie Wang. Qin Sheng dialed Annie Wang's phone with an uneasy mood. However, no one answered the phone several times in a row. Qin Sheng was somewhat puzzled. What's wrong? No one answered the phone? Qin Ran asked with a frown. Qin Sheng nodded helplessly with a bitter smile. He hesitated for a moment and said, Sister, wait in the car for a while. I'll go in and see if there's anyone at home. This was the only thing she could do now. Qin Ran had to wait for Qin Sheng's news in the car. The security guard of Jindi Furong Shurjia recognized Qin Sheng. After all, Qin Sheng had come back several times, so he directly let Qin Sheng in. After Qin Sheng arrived downstairs, he pressed the access control system 3 times. However, no one answered and opened the door, which confirmed that there was no one at home. Qin Sheng could only go out helplessly. He could not help but feel a little worried. What should he do? When he went out, he saw the security guard. Qin Sheng asked him casually. Then he knew that Annie Wang and Xin had gone out in the afternoon. The security guard had a deep impression of this beautiful mother and daughter. They had a good relationship in daily life, so he could remember them. Qin Sheng went back to the car. Qin Ran knew what was going on from Qin Sheng's expression. She smiled bitterly and said, No one at home? Qin Sheng sighed and said, No one at home. But the security guard said that Annie Wang and Xin went out and haven't come back yet. Qin Ran joked, Poor child. You have a home, but can't go back. Qin Sheng thought for a moment and said, Let's wait for a while. If Xin and Annie Wang don't come back in half an hour, I'll find a way to contact others and see if I can find Xin and Annie Wang. Okay. Anyway, I have nothing to do. You can tell me about them. I can chat with them later. Qin Ran said indifferently. Anyway, they would go back to Beijing tomorrow. They had enough time. In this way, Qin Sheng and Qin Ran could only wait here. In less than half an hour, Qin Sheng saw Annie Wang driving the old Audi A4L back. After all, he remembered Annie Wang's license plate very clearly. So Qin Sheng finally smiled. Sister, they're back. Qin Sheng stared at the Audi A4L at the door and smiled. From Qin Sheng's smile, Qin Ran could tell how deep his feelings for the Lin family were. So she said with a smile, Let's go. Take me to meet the great benefactor of the Qin family. You always say that Sister Xin is a great beauty. Let me see how beautiful the great beauty you mentioned is. When Qin Sheng and Qin Ran were about to get out of the car, there seemed to be a conflict at the door. It seemed that a car in front of them was blocking the entrance. The car owner was arguing with the security guard. Annie Wang honked twice. The driver in the front was a little angry when he heard the honking. He directly turned around and walked to the front of the Audi. He slapped the hood of the Audi twice and scolded at the same time. Damn it. Don't you have eyes? Why did you honk? Annie Wang was shocked. She was in a hurry to go home to cook and prepare some food for the Spring Festival. She didn't expect such a thing to happen. Annie Wang didn't say anything and thought that it would be over soon. Since her husband's accident, she had been kind to others everywhere, which could be regarded as accumulating good karma for the Lin family. Maybe it was because she had no one to rely on, that she was a little bit less confident. But Xin was not so easy to deal with. Her father was not by her side, and her brother had disappeared without a trace. She was the only one who could protect her mother. How could she tolerate others bullying her mother? So Xin directly got out of the car without saying anything. Annie Wong called Xin, but she couldn't stop her. She had to get out of the car quickly. After Xin got out of the car, she glared at the fierce-looking man in front of her and said, "What did you just say?" Seeing that it was two women, the man became more unscrupulous and said, "Damn it. Didn't you see there was a car in front of you? Honk your damn horn. Are you in a hurry to be reincarnated?" Xin was so angry that she fought back without hesitation. "You are a grown-up. If you don't know how to talk when you go out, don't come out and embarrass your parents." The man didn't expect that the beauty in front of him would dare to talk back. Of course, he would not admit defeat. Moreover, there were two friends present. His face was more important than anything else. So he scolded again, "Bitch, how dare you scold me? I think you're courting death." After that, the man raised his wrist and was about to slap Xin. People who could live in this Zhejiang New District were all rich. What's more, this man drove a Land Rover, so of course he was more unscrupulous. Xin didn't expect that the man still wanted to hit her, but she still stood there without flinching. Annie Wong, who was walking over, was shocked and shouted, "Xin!" Just when Xin had accepted her fate and the man's slap was about to touch her beautiful face intimately, the man's arm was suddenly grabbed by someone. Only a man's gloomy voice could be heard. "Try saying what you just said again." Of course, the man who spoke was Qin Sheng. Originally, his face was full of a sincere smile when he saw his family. But after seeing the scene in front of him, Qin Sheng's face instantly became extremely gloomy. On the way, he told himself that he would never let anyone bully Annie Wong and Xin in the future, let alone let them suffer any grievances. He would definitely try his best to make up for the regrets of these years. Now, someone dared to challenge his bottom line. How could Xin bear it? Annie Wong saw Qin first and shouted in disbelief. Xin, who thought that she would be beaten, didn't expect that the man's arm would be grabbed by someone. She subconsciously looked at the initiator next to her. When she saw that it was Qin Sheng, Xin was stunned. She couldn't believe that the man in front of her was actually Qin Sheng. Her eyes turned red in an instant, and she shouted aggrievedly, "Brother!" The man's arm was grabbed by someone. He didn't expect that someone would meddle in his business. Hearing Qin Sheng's arrogant words, he shouted angrily, "F***CKU. Who do you think you are?" Qin Sheng had no time to say hello to Annie Wong and Xin, because he had to let the man in front of him remember that today would be the unluckiest day of his life. Qin Sheng narrowed his eyes and said, "You are courting death." At this moment, his eyes were full of murderous intent. Before his voice died away, Qin Sheng directly hit the man's face with a heavy punch. Then he used all his strength to kick the man's abdomen. In an instant, the man flew backward like a kite with a broken string. Then he hit the trunk of the Land Rover in front of him heavily and fell to the ground, vomiting blood. It could be seen how angry Qin Sheng was. Such a sudden change scared the onlookers. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.